What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to, do a full story video. A full story video is when I take a bunch of videos I did in the past that tell one overarching story and combine them together into one big video. Now, today's full story video is going to be about Elektra in the 2001 series. You see, back in the early 2000s, when it came to Marvel Knights, Marvel gave Elektra her own book. Now, originally, it did start off with Brian Michael Bendis, but then after the first story arc, he left and you had Greg Rucka come in and he wrote for like 3 or 4 stories. And then he left. Then the series was wrapped up by another writer known as Robert Rowdy. And so you're able to see what 3 different writers did for the character of Elektra in the early 2000s in this video right here. I do hope you enjoy. What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to cover some Marvel Knights on my channel. And this is pretty huge for me because you guys have been asking me to cover some Marvel Knights. And I say, you know what? Let's go ahead and do it, but let's go ahead and use Elektra. Now, I do know I did mention a while back I would do Black Widow. I'm going to save her for later. Instead, I kind of want to sit down and cover some Elektra for Marvel Knight instead, because honestly, it was a great run. Now, originally, the run was started by, Brian Michael Bendis, but then he left after like 6 issues. It was taken over by Greg Rucka. And honestly, Greg did a great job when it came to the character of Elektra. But before we can dive into his run, we got to sit down and talk about Brian Michael Bendis' Elektra. Now, if you're new to comics, you may not know what Marvel Knights is all about. Let me explain. You see, in the late 1990s, Marvel's main goal was to, get the fans back they had lost in the 1990s. You see, the 1990s were a up and down period of time for Marvel. You know, at first, everything was great, but by the late 1990s, things began to fall apart very quickly. And so for Marvel, their main goal was to get everyone back on board. And that kind of led into Marvel doing a lot of different things in the late 1990s going into the early 2000s. So for example, you had Ultimate Marvel. You also had Marvel Knights. Now, Marvel Knights really did focus more on, I say, the street level characters, but occasionally you had some characters who weren't really street level get the banner as well to get the limelight. But either way, it was Marvel saying, hey, we have these characters that need a tad bit more love to get out there more. And so you had Daredevil, Black Panther, The Punisher, you had Black Widow, and you also had Elektra. And so Marvel Knight was just a way for Marvel to use to kind of bring their fans back, but also they could kind of push the envelope a tad bit when it came to telling more adult stories, because technically these books, Elektra books, had the label saying, hey, there's some big time violence in this book. So if you're somebody who's not used to that, get ready because these books have it. Now, honestly, as I read through these books, there weren't that much violent scenes, but again, it was Marvel slowly trying to push that envelope, saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and tell more adult stories. Now, diving into the first issue of this series, we actually jump over to Elektra talking to a man. Now, this man is really important, and here's the reason why. You see, she's talking to the guy who had killed her father. Now, when it comes to Elektra's father, he was technically on accident shot and killed by this man right here. It was a complete accident, but for this guy, it does seem like Elektra found him to only kill him to get revenge for him killing her father. But first, she begins to tell him her life story. Now, I'm not really going to jump into her life story here. It's just her saying like how she lost her father, how she met Daredevil, how Bullseye killed her off, where she had trained at, how she joined the Hand, all those different things that most fans know of, and some don't worry, because you don't really need to know all of that to understand this story right here. Now, after she tells this guy the story, he kind of believes once again that she's here to, you know, kill him. But she says no. Matter of fact, I have another story to tell you. And so as she tells this story, we have to jump back 1 week ago where we actually pick up in Paris. Now, this is Elektra just minding her business, but then out of nowhere, she is confronted by a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Now, his name is Stanley, and really, Stanley is only going to be important for this story arc. That's really it, but he does play a major role where we're going to see him a lot and talk a lot about him, but he does work for S.H.I.E.L.D., and apparently he came here to Elektra to offer her a job given to her by Nick Fury. Now, for Nick Fury, we're also going to see him as well, but what he's doing here is trying to cross some lines without actually getting in trouble. Now, for Stanley, he does tell Elektra like, hey, listen, I got some money to give to you by Nick Fury, but he wants a job done because right now, freedom is being attacked because right now, your mission is to go after Hydra. Hydra is up to something once again. And so we do learn that S.H.I.E.L.D. wants to hire Elektra to go after a world leader, the world leader for Iraq. And his name is Saddam Abid Dassam. Now, for this guy, apparently he has a box. Now, we are not told what is exactly inside the box, but apparently whatever is inside that box is really important. But we do learn that Iraq has begun to work with Hydra. Now, around this time in Marvel Comics, Hydra was not like your old school Hydra, you know, that goofball organization that was trying to dominate the world. Instead, they are now going out of their way to kind of help out smaller countries to pull off big terrorist attacks. And currently, they're helping out Iraq at the moment. And so you have this guy saying, listen, I need you to kind of, you know, go over there and assassinate their leader, but to also get that box. Now, we can't tell you what is inside the box, but like, hey, Nick says he'll pay you a lot of money if you're able to pull off this job. Now, for Elektra, at first, she does not want to accept this job, but you have Stanley say, listen, the big boss man said, like, he'll make your record clear, like, he can help you out if you just do this job for us. But she does not trust Stanley. And so you have Nick call on Stanley's phone to talk to Elektra to kind of confirm like, yes, he's with me, and yes, I'll pay you a lot, but also I can make sure your record becomes clean again so that you're not being targeted by all these different government agencies around the world. Now, for Elektra, she is able to pull off one heck of a disappearance trick because while you have Stanley look away for just 1 second, she's gone. She also took the money. And so for Stanley, he's kind of wondering, did she accept the job at least? Now, 1 week later, we pick up with Stanley hanging out with another S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Her name is Molly. Now, Molly is only important for like the first 2 chapters. So this one, the next one, that's really it. But you have Molly and also Stanley just having lunch, but you have Stanley talking about Elektra. But why you have the 2 characters talking? Well, the same bag he gave Elektra that was full of money in Paris has reappeared, and there's a note inside of it. Is Elektra saying the job is too dangerous? A matter of fact, if you want me to do it, you need to double the amount of money that you are trying to give me. Now, for Stanley, that tells him that, hey, she's nearby, and he begins to freak out instantly. Now, while he's freaking out, we do get confirmation that she is nearby. She was in disguise. But the problem is her disguise is easily blown because she's now being attacked by different members of Hydra, which kind of tells us that somehow Hydra knew that she'll be here to supposedly meet with Stanley or possibly with Nick Fury. Either way, Hydra knew about this meeting spot, and so they tried to kill her, but she was able to take them down. Now for Stanley, he kind of believes there's something going on with Elektra, but she tells him, you have a mole in your organization right now. Somebody in S.H.I.E.L.D. is playing both sides, and we honestly need to work together. But for Stanley, he cannot trust her. And so the way the first chapter ends is with him shooting her. And we're left to believe at first that Elektra is now dead. As we dive into the second chapter for this series, we actually see that, well, it does pick up the last chapter left off at. So you're kind of believing that, okay, Elektra is dead. This is kind of a huge problem. How are they going to bring her back? But in reality, it seems to be like a dream because you didn't have Stanley wake up. Now, this is really important for what happens down the road in later chapters for Stanley, where we begin to know more about his character. But he does wake up, and at first it's kind of like, okay, maybe he was dreaming, maybe he did not kill off Elektra. But then when he goes over to his S.H.I.E.L.D. log, well, apparently he put in that log that he did kill off Elektra. So right now the man truly believes that he had killed her off, and we're kind of left to wonder if he actually did. If that's the case, then what's going to happen to her? This is her book. Now, he does hear a knock on the door. It's Molly and another agent who says, hey, the big man wants to talk to you. And we already know who he's talking about. He is talking about Nick Fury. So Stanley goes, but it's kind of Stanley believing that he's currently in some big time trouble with Nick. Once they do arrive at this base that Nick Fury has, because we already know, for Nick Fury, the man got bases on bases around the world. But for Nick Fury, while you have him there with other agents inside his base, you have Stanley very confused about what's happening. And you have Nick inform Stanley that there was no body. Like, he may have shot Elektra, but when the S.H.I.E.L.D. team arrived, they could not find the body at all. Now, there is a very good reason why, but before we are able to learn what that actual reason is, well, Elektra was able to get inside this base. Now, this is Elektra really trying to paint that picture that, hey, Nick, you need to know that somebody in your organization is a mold for Hydra. Like, somebody in this group right here that you believe that you can trust is actually somebody that you cannot trust. The question is right now, who is that person? Now, the way the book is going, you would kind of believe that it would be, well, of course, Stanley, because he's the guy that the book has been focusing a lot on when it comes to all these different S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. But telling you now, it's not him. Now, you do have Elektra leave, but before she does leave, she calls Nick out on his BS game. She said, listen, the only reason why you want me to pull this off for you because, well, the U.S. government did not approve your idea of trying to assassinate the leader of Iraq. And so you're trying to hire me and use me under the table so that you won't get in trouble, but at least the job is done. Now for Nick, he's kind of like, yeah, you called me out. But here's the thing. Even if you try to decline my offer, just know I found you once, and I can always find you over and over and over again. We also get told that Elektra's father never did like Nick Fury, and we kind of see why here. Now, the reason why Elektra is alive could be easily explained here, but also something else down the road could also be the actual reasoning why she's still alive. Because you have Nick tell Stanley like, hey, what happened to you was she did some mind game to your mind to make you believe that she had actually died. But in reality, she did not die. She actually survived. Some kind of ninja trick that she knows. Either way, she's alive and we can now go on with our mission. But for Stanley, he's kind of like, nah, man, there's no way. I truly believed that I had shot and killed off Elektra. Now, we do learn who is the actual spy in this story, and that would be Molly, the other S.H.I.E.L.D. agent we met in the last chapter who was hanging out with Stanley. Now, we see Molly go over to the base that Hydra has in Iraq, where we are being introduced to two other characters, Agent Zalman and Agent King, both working for Hydra. Now, both characters are not really that important to remember outside the story. Just know that they're going to be around to represent Hydra. But we kind of learn why they're actually working with the world leader of Iraq. And the reason why, because what is inside the box. And we kind of find out that what is inside the box is actually the Scorpion Key. Now, before I dive into the Scorpion Key, I do want to mention that you do have Molly tell her two bosses, these two agents working for Hydra, that Nick Fury does not have permission from the US government to go after Hydra nor Iraq. He was told to stay in a holding position. But for Nick, he can't do that. And so that is why he had hired Elektra to go after them. And so now with Hydra knowing that one, Elektra is involved, but two, Nick Fury really can't do anything at all until they actually pull off a big move, it now kind of helps them to figure out what their next move should be as a way to hit back at S.H.I.E.L.D., but also Nick Fury. But yes, when it comes to Iraq and Hydra, well, it does seem like they have the Scorpion Key, a very powerful item to have in their grasp. Now, the second chapter of this book really does end with, well, Molly trying to head back over to the S.H.I.E.L.D. base, but Elektra follow her. And Elektra knows that she is basically, you know, the actual mole in the group. And so you have Elektra being able to steal the vehicle that Molly was using to get back to point A to point B, leaving her stranded in the middle of the desert. Now let's sit down and talk a tad bit about the Scorpio key. Now in reality, it's actually called the Zodiac key, but I did see over time Marvel Comics that it has gone by different names. The main name is the Zodiac key, not the Scorpio key like it is in this book. Now, the Zodiac key actually first appeared in Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., issue number 1, all the way back in 1968. Now, in that book, we did learn the Zodiac key came from a different dimension. Now, this dimension had a big war between good and evil, but neither side could actually win. But then you had a brotherhood in that dimension were able to create the key. Now, when they made the key, they made sure to send the key over to Earth. And the reason why, because the battle between good and evil is more intense in our reality than in that reality where the key had came from. Now, with that being said, whoever holds the key gets a huge range of different kinds of powers to use for their own personal gain. Like, for example, the idea to teleport and also fire energy blasts. It also can be used as a very powerful energy source as well. But apparently, Iraq and also Hydra have their hands on that key. And that is actually really dangerous. Now, as we dive into the third chapter, we are reminded that Elektra is telling this story not to us as the readers, but actually to a guy who had killed her father on accident. Now, this man has no idea why in the world that she is trying to tell him this story for. But again, he's going to be very important for the very end of the book. But either way, she does continue on with her story. And so getting back into the actual story 1 week ago from the present day, where you have her telling that guy the entire story, we jump back over to Baghdad, where we pick up with Stanley, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent that had technically brought Elektra in, but also the other agent we saw earlier. Is just that we were never told his actual name. Now, you have the two guys just walking around the area talking about, Elektra. But then while they are doing that, a whole scene pops out nearby them where you have two guys kind of get upset about the idea of calling someone else another name. Who actually knows? Either way, those guys begin to fight against each other, but one of those guys is a soldier for this country. And so he pulls a gun out, killing the other guy off. Now, our two innocent SHIELD agents, because they were nearby, they kind of get pulled into the actual incident. And it does seem like this soldier is going to kill them as well because they technically witnessed the crime. But luckily for Stanley and the other SHIELD agent, they are saved at the very last second by Elektra. Now, this kind of shows that there is some kind of weird connection going on between Elektra and also Stanley. And that connection is only going to grow deeper as we go through this chapter and the last two chapters. Now, later on in the day, we do see Elektra be confronted by, Hydra. Now, this is Hydra trying to make a deal with Elektra and hoping that she'll take their offer, work against Nick, but also help them with something else. You see, we do learn that for Hydra, originally their goal was to help Iraq out by giving them money to help build up their country and their weapons to kind of pull off different attacks across the world. But then they had learned that, the leader of Iraq has the zodiac key. And with them having the zodiac key, that is an actual huge problem. Not for them, it's really more the idea that they want the key, but the key is always near him, always with the world leader. And so they're asking Elektra to kind of, assassinate the leader, but also hand over or give them the zodiac key. So yes, she'll still be helping out America in a way, but at the same time though, she'll also be helping out Hydra. And so they do leave her wondering which offer she should actually take, because one of those offers, she has to take it. But the problem is that one offer could affect the other one on the other side. Now, later on in the day, we see that Elektra had broke into the home or hotel that Stanley was using. Now, when he comes home, he's all like, yo, why in my room right now? Like, what in the world is going on here? Now, for Elektra, she kind of explains why she took the actual job from SHIELD. Because by this time in Marvel Comics, Elektra had no master. And usually all the skills that she had learned over the years, becoming a great assassin or a great fighter, she used those skills for a certain master to serve that master if they were in control of her. But the problem is right now, she doesn't have a master. She's technically a free agent. And so for her, she kind of feels like she has no honor. But at the same time, she kind of feels like if she does this gig, it might make her worthy again. Make her kind of happy to be able to use her skills for an actual purpose in life. Now, with that, she's telling all of this over to Stanley. And for Stanley, he could not understand why in the world would she, Elektra, tell him all these different things. And before she leaves, she said, oh, because you're not real. And she just jumps out the window. And you're kind of left to wonder, why would she say that about Stanley? Now, you did have Elektra go meet up with Hydra once again and kind of tell them like, hey, I'm not going to take your offer at all. Matter of fact, it is completely declined. I'm not going to help you steal the Zodiac key. Now, while you have Elektra kind of telling Hydra what she's not going to do, they begin to talk down to her. But at the same time, we do learn that they hire somebody else to replace her, just in case that, she did decline the actual offer. But also he says, I was told many years ago that samurais are better than ninjas. And that is the moment Elektra is confronted by the Silver Samurai. He was hired to take her place to hopefully complete the job that Hydra wants done. And really, when it comes to the Silver Samurai, he's kind of an off and on member of Hydra. So it does kind of make sense that he'll be here right now helping Hydra to hopefully take Elektra out, but to also complete the mission of getting the Zodiac key. Now, the fourth issue is kind of interesting to me because it's just a bunch of splash pages. So like 12 splash pages given to us to give us a chapter of the story arc. And so really in the early parts of the splash pages, we're seeing Elektra fighting against the Silver Samurai. And their battle does go on for a few pages, yes, but while you have her doing that, we also see different things happening when it comes to the media. So, for example, you have Sharon Carter, who used to be a director of S.H.I.E.L.D., having a meeting with a reporter asking about the whole situation with Iraq. Now, that interview takes place in America, but at the same time in Iraq, you also have the media covering a speech being done by their leader. Now, also, this is their leader kind of saying like, enough is enough of the idea of all these different threats coming from different countries who are part of the United Nations. Now, I want to jump over to Stanley. Here's the reason why. Because Stanley does find out by using Nick Fury's codes to figure out that he's actually not even a real person. That is what Elektra meant earlier, that he is a life model decoy, an LMD. Now, life model decoys are like the perfect robots in Marvel comics because they look so real that you really can't tell if they're real or fake unless you have a very high level of awareness. And for Elektra, she was able to tell that that man was a life model decoy. And that is why I said earlier that when it came to her being shot and killed, that later on in the story arc, there's going to be a moment where it's kind of like, is that moment the real reason why she's still alive? Because now it does kind of explain why he felt like he shot and killed Elektra. Because now it seems like that when it came to that moment, it was actually put in his mind that possibly that whole entire moment was not real at all because he's a robot. Everything he believes that he remembers is technically not real. It was put into his robot mind. Either way, he does freak out and just runs off. Now for Nick Fury, he's kind of like, let him go because he's a robot. Sooner or later, his battery is going to die. And when it does, well, that's it. He's gone. So let's go ahead and move on with our situation. Now, things get even wilder in Iraq because you didn't have, well, you have their leader pull out the Zodiac key. Now, when he does, it does seem like there is a complete media blackout. Like none of the different media sources out there is being able to report anything at all. Now, Elektra and also Hydra, they're nearby and they kind of see what is actually happening in Iraq. And we see that, well, like I said, the world leader of Iraq has planned on using the actual Zodiac key. And so there is a huge amount of energy just flowing in the air around the actual palace or the base of the world leader for Iraq. And so this leads us into the final chapter. Now, as we dive into the final chapter for today's video, things do kind of get very intense. Let me explain. So with the whole idea of the world leader of Iraq having the Zodiac key, and you had the UN, watching very closely, as soon as there was a media blackout, as soon as they were able to detect a huge amount of energy coming from the actual palace in Iraq, you had the US Army go ahead and go into the country. But the problem is, the world leader of Iraq is using the Zodiac key to take out different planes left and right. All these jets are really unable to get close to the palace because, like I said earlier, he is able to shoot energy blasts of different kinds to take out different targets that he's trying to get rid of. Now for Elektra, she's there. She sees what's happening, but then out of nowhere, a vehicle pulls up. It's Stanley. Now, this is the end for Stanley because he is actually able to get Elektra close enough to the palace. But the problem is his battery dies as soon as he's able to get her close enough to the palace. So there goes Stanley, and we are never going to see him again. But either way, you do have Elektra being able to go ahead and get inside the actual palace. Now, here's the big thing. You see, you have Hydra pulling out because Hydra realized that they have been played. You see, Agent King realized that when it comes to Saddam, the world leader for Iraq, he kind of knew to use Hydra, but also use the UN as decoys to keep everyone's attention away from what he really has in possession, the Zodiac key, so that when the time comes, he could pull off something like this big incident right here out of nowhere. Because US and other countries, they were watching Iraq very closely. And so when that media blackout happened, and with his speech before the media blackout, he knew those other countries would sooner or later move in. And so he was using the UN, using Hydra as decoys to keep everything under wrap about him having the Zodiac key. But either way, you have Hydra say, hey, we got to dip out of here, so let's go now. Now, we do get a couple pages where we see Elektra being able to make it inside the actual palace. And with her being inside the palace, we do see her going after, well, Saddam. Now, we don't actually get the chance to see her take him out. All we know is that by the end of the section, we see her run towards him and then nothing happens, it seems like. Except you didn't have Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. move in. Now, when they get inside the place, they find the dead body of Saddam. It's just that he was now turned completely into a skeleton. So we're kind of left to wonder, did a Zodiac key do something to him? But then there's a note left behind by Elektra that kind of tells Nick Fury like, hey, if you want a Zodiac key or figure out where it's at, you and I need to have a meeting back in New York. Now, when it comes to this meeting, it's really more of Elektra kind of, again, calling out Nick Fury because, like I said earlier, we knew that Nick Fury did not have the right or was not approved to do anything towards Iraq. So he was going to hire Elektra to do things under the table so that he would not get in trouble if Elektra had killed off Saddam. And so this is her once again saying like, I'm calling you out on your BS because even though you knew you could use me to complete your mission, at the same time, innocent people were affected by this because your eagerness to just take out bad men. Like, yes, bad men deserve to be killed off, but at the same time, if you keep them in the gun, innocent people are going to get hurt. I used the money that you gave me to help out those innocent people whose lives were technically ruined in your big battle against Iraq. Now, for Nick Fury, even though he does know what Elektra is saying is actually true, he's also saying, is it wrong for me to go ahead and jump the gun before things get even worse down the road? Because think about Hitler. If somebody was able to go back in time and take him out, then most likely we could have saved millions of lives. Or if somebody had jumped the gun back then and taken Hitler out, million lives would have been saved. And so even though you're mad at me because some innocent people were hurt or killed because of my battle against Iraq, at least there's not a huge toll of death because I did not sit by and do nothing. Now the question is right now, where is the Zodiac key? Now, we do kind of find out that she did give over the Zodiac key over to the same guy she was telling the entire story to. The same guy who killed off her father on accident. Because this man is so scared of Elektra, she knows that he will not do anything at all with the key, but also he'll make sure that no one will find out that he does have the key. And so for Nick Fury or anyone else who tries to find it, well, unfortunately, What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over Elektra, and now we pick up with Greg Rucka's run. Now remember, we had covered the first story arc that was written by Brian Michael Bendis, but after Bendis had wrote the first story arc, well, he left the title, and you had Greg come in and say, you know what? Let me take over and let me do my thing. Now, when it comes to his first story arc, it's only 3 issues. It's issues number 7, 8, and 9. Now, with that being said, we also see an artist change as well mid-story. So the first 2 chapters are being drawn by Chuck Austin and then change over to a different artist. And honestly, I forgot the name of the other artist. I want to say it's Joe Bennett or Joe Burnett. Either way, we are now going to begin our coverage over Greg Rucka's run on Elektra with this 3-part story arc. And so getting into the first chapter for today's video, we actually pick up with an Interpol agent better known as Chris Olsen. And Chris is going to be really important for this story arc. Now, for Chris, we do see him arrive in Athens, the capital of Greece. Now, when he does arrive, he is being surrounded by a bunch of women, but we go to see him talk to the main one in charge of this group. Now, her name is Catamidas. Now, Catamidas is trying to get information out of Chris Olsen. Now, at first, we do learn that she's trying to contact somebody that could help her with a certain problem that had happened to her 10 years ago. Now, after a couple more sentences being said to one another, we do learn that Chris has information for Catamidas to contact Elektra because she needs the help of Elektra to pull off her revenge against a certain group of people. Now, for Chris, he tells her, if you want to contact Elektra and you want to pay her to be your top assassin to handle a certain problem for you, you have to use the papers. So here's the info of what you have to do to initiate the contact. After that, it's all up to you if she does accept your deal to work for you. And you then have Chris be escorted out of the island back to somewhere else where he came from. Now, we do learn that Chris is actually working for another agent in Interpol, and that will be a character known as Gene Valence. Now, Gene is also going to be very important, but also he's blackmailing Chris to work for the actual agency because apparently Chris did something in the past, and the problem is if word gets out what Chris had done in the past, Chris will be going away for a very long time. And so, unfortunately, Chris has no choice but to work for Gene. Now, for Gene, he wants all the information that Chris had gathered while being surrounded by Catamidas' group, where you do have Chris explain that she does have 8 guards around her. All women, no men at all. But also, he gave the information on how to contact Elektra. So now we know where Chris got the info from. But apparently for Gene, he wants Elektra, but we're not technically told why just yet. Now, the next few pages are really more of Elektra being contacted by Catamidas. Now, remember, Chris told her, if you want to reach Elektra, you're going to have to use the paper. So you have Catamidas being able to put out an ad for Elektra to see. And once she does see the ad, you have Elektra respond back with another ad. Now, once you have Catamidas see that ad, you then have Catamidas be able to access a secure website and use the password that Elektra had given her. And so once you have the 2 characters being able to begin to talk to one another on this secure website, you have Elektra now know how much Catamidas is planning to pay her to accomplish some kind of contract. Now you have Elektra tell her, hey, you need to pay me the first half and then the rest after I complete the contract. But also let's meet up here at this location to talk out about what the contract is all about. Now, Interpol was also able to kind of listen in on the conversations that Catametus and also Elektra had on the phone about where they're going to meet up at and how much money they're going to pay, but also how many people she has to kill. We kind of learned that it's going to be 4 people. Now, with that being said, you then have Jean tell Chris that he has to go back to Athens, to go back to Catametus Island, to kind of be there when Elektra arrives. And when she does arrive, Chris has to inform Jean when she does arrive. Now, for Chris, he does not want to go because one, it's Elektra. She will be able to know when somebody is watching her in a matter of seconds, but also she's very deadly. So once she knows you're there, you're dead, and that will be it. But for Chris, he has no choice because, like I said earlier, Jean is blackmailing Chris. He reminds Chris, like, hey, listen, if you don't work for us, I'm going to have to charge you for manslaughter, and apparently 12 counts of manslaughter. And so Chris has no choice but to go ahead and go back to the island. Now, the ending of this chapter, we do see Elektra head over to Catametus Island. Now, once she does arrive, you have Chris watching her. But like Chris said earlier, Elektra is a trained assassin. She will be able to realize that somebody is watching her in a matter of seconds. And so for Chris, unfortunately, she was able to realize that he was there just like that. Now, Elektra does not go after Chris. Instead, she continues on. And when she does meet up with Catametus. Now, we do learn what this contract is all about. And apparently, 10 years ago, Catametus was assaulted back in college by a group of men. And so she wants Elektra to help her get revenge against those men who had did her wrong 10 years ago. And so as we dive into the second chapter, we actually do pick up with Elektra learning about the 4 men who had assaulted Catametus back in the past 10 years ago. Now, this is not her telling Elektra like, hey, I want you to kill these guys off. No, she wants Elektra to help get her revenge against those 4 guys. And so for Elektra, her assignment is to bring the 4 men back over to Catametus so that she can go ahead and get her revenge against those men. Now, something else I do want you to remember is that Elektra is Greek, and that's going to be somewhat important in the last chapter of the book, but you do have Elektra leave to go complete the assignment. Now, after you have Elektra leave the island, she does go back to Athens. And when she does arrive there at the harbor, it is completely surrounded by Interpol agents. Now, Jean believes that he has enough to actually capture Elektra. Well, unfortunately, the man was completely wrong because you do have Elektra being able to get away very easily and get the heck out of there. Like Chris told Jean, Elektra is a well-trained assassin. You can't bring her down so easily. Now for Jean, he believed that he should be able to bring her down because she is a woman, but does not realize that she is one heck of an assassin. Now, after that, you then have Elektra go to Los Angeles. Now, when she does arrive at Los Angeles, you do have Elektra go after the first 4 men who had apparently assaulted Catametus. The first is a guy known as Miller. Now, Miller is a police officer who is a dirty cop. You know, he kind of helps out the sex workers in the area get by without being arrested if they do give him some service as well. Now, you do have Elektra pretend to be a sex worker to get close to him. And once she does, bam, she got him, and now she can bring him over to Catametus. Now, I want to jump back over to Chris because you have Chris at the bar just drinking the night away. But while doing that, he's then confronted by a woman. Now, at first, he believes that this woman must be working for Catametus, but she says, no, I'm actually working for Elektra. I was sent here to make a deal with you. Now, we are not going to learn what that deal is, but we do know that that deal is going to be very important for Chris and Elektra down the road. But now we jump back over to Elektra, where we see her going to Chicago, going after another one of her 4 targets. Now, his name is Ramon. And really, at first, it does seem like Ramon is a nice guy. But while he's trying to look around his apartment and fix some things up, you didn't have Elektra being able to come from behind to knock him out. Bam. Now she has 2 of her 4 targets. Now, for Elektra, she has to make sure that these guys get back over to Catamitas alive, not dead. And so you have Elektra being able to ship the guys over to Catamitas through a cargo ship, it seems, and made sure those 2 men that she already took out will not die while being shipped over the world. But either way, they do arrive, and now for Elektra, she only has 2 more targets left to take care of. And really, for Elektra, the trend continues on when she goes over to a new location. When she goes over to Houston, she finds another one of her targets. She walks up to him, she gives him a handshake, next thing you know, bam, he's gone just like that. He's knocked out, and now she only has 1 more to go. And really, she goes to Manhattan right after taking out her 3rd target. She goes for her last one. And just like the last 3, she gets close to him and knocks him out as well too. And so just like that, bam, 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 all 4 targets were easily taken out and all delivered back to Catamitas. So now she's able to get her revenge against these men. Now, at the end of the 2nd chapter, you do have Elektra go back over to Catamitas to get her money because she was able to accomplish the goal. She was able to bring all 4 men back over to Catamitas. And of course, she does get paid $4 million, 1 for each of the 4 guys that she had brought over. But for Catamitas, Elektra is not done yet. She still wants Elektra's help for something else. You see, for the 4 men who had assaulted Catamitas 10 years ago, she wants to get revenge against them, but she wants to torture them in the old ancient Greek ways. And so she's kind of hoping that Elektra would actually help out. Now, for Catamitas, she's going to pay Elektra for helping out if she agrees. But at the same time, she kind of feels like Elektra is the best person who's actually suited to do some kind of torturing to the 4 guys who had assaulted Catamitas. But as we get into issue number 9, this is where we get a flashback. By the way, I just realized I've been calling her by the wrong name completely. I want to say it's Catamitas. I could be wrong. Either way, we do get a flashback where she explains to us when she was assaulted by these 4 men. You see, it was their college days. And while being in college, she thought that she'll be okay there. She'll get a good education. She met up with guys who then invited her to a party. Except when she had arrived at that party, unfortunately, she was assaulted. Now, here's the catch. There are 4 guys there. One of them does not go into the room. He sees what happens and just walks right back out. One of them was in the room already, but he was so freaked out what he was seeing, he just turned his head away. The other 2, they continue to assault her. So 2 of the guys did not do anything at all because of, well, being scared of the other 2 guys. But for Catamitas, that's not okay at all. They were there and they should have tried to help her, but they didn't. But now all 4 men must be tortured and killed. Now for Elektra, she says no right off the bat because to her it is completely wrong. But also for Elektra, she is an assassin. Your goal is to pay her to take care of people like killing them or possibly kidnapping them. But once you go over to the idea of torturing, to her it is completely wrong. But also for Elektra, she believes that one of the guys is actually innocent because that one guy who walked in the room, saw what was happening, and then walked out, to her, she's kind of like, he didn't do anything wrong towards you. Now, technically, he could have had helped you and he did not. But again, he didn't assault you at all. Now, for Elektra, she does say no, but you do have Catamitas kind of tell her, if this was you and you were kind of in the same boat, would you ask for help as well? Now, for Chris, we see him meeting up with Jean, and when he does, he informs Jean that he has an informant who knows where Elektra is going to be at next. And for Jean, that is great because his main goal is to bring in Elektra at this moment. And so at first, he does not believe Chris, but again, he's kind of like, listen, if you have somebody out there who knows where she's going to be at next, then I have no choice but to go ahead and trust you and hoping that your source is actually reliable. And so you have Chris and Jean agree to go meet up with this informant to figure out where Elektra is going to be at next. Now, getting back over to Elektra and Catamidas, we do see the two characters, getting ready to torture the four men who were responsible for attacking Catamidas 10 years ago. Now, here is the big catch. You see, Elektra has not said yes yet. She was just sitting there right now observing what is happening. And we also see Catamidas go out of her way to get an ancient Greek mask to put on her face. Now, I don't know which mask this is, and I tried my best to figure out which mask she's actually wearing to kind of know more about the history behind it. But unfortunately, couldn't find anything about it. But you do have Catamidas begin to torture the different men there. Now, she does ask Elektra one more time, are you going to join? Elektra says no again. And she says to Elektra, do not interfere then if you are not going to help out at all. But now we jump back over to Chris and Jean. Now remember, Chris told Jean that he knew somebody who could most likely help him figure out where is Elektra at. And so you have Chris and Jean go to meet up with this person down a dark alley. Now, once they do reach a door, you have Jean walk in first. Sorry, you have Chris walk in first and Jean stays behind him. But Jean should have probably went in first or really stayed outside, because soon as Jean does enter the building, someone else from behind grabs him and of course they drug him. Now, once he does wake up, he realizes that one, he has been bound to a bed, but two, you have Chris and the mysterious woman that Elektra hired earlier to help out Chris take photos of Jean as a way to blackmail him, but to also say, hey, you need to back off on Elektra. You are not going to come after her at all anymore. Now, the book really does end on I don't want to say a bad note or a good note, but just an okay note. Because, like I said earlier, one of the four guys did not do anything to Catamidas at all. Matter of fact, they walked in, they got scared, and they left. And so, after you have Ramon get tortured for a tad bit, Elektra steps in and says, stop. You may torture the other three guys for what they have done to you, but him? You cannot torture him at all, because technically he did nothing wrong. I mean, yes, he kind of could have helped out, but he walked away. And so he already paid for his crime. And so you have Elektra grab him and they walk away. And that's how the book really ends. And it's kind of, for me personally, Greg Rucka saying, do you feel like Ramon is innocent or is Ramon guilty? Because if he is guilty, it's because he didn't help her out. But if you say he is innocent because he walked away, it's really more, for me, Greg Rucka saying, it's up to you to decide, does Ramon deserve to be punished for not helping her out 10 years ago? But this is where we are. What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over Greg Rucka's Elektra run. And guys, we pick up with, I call, volume 2 of his run. Now, this is actually a great story arc. Now, the main story arc does take place in issues number 11 all the way up to issue number 15. But I kind of want to throw in issue number 10 as well, because it's a great prelude that leads into the actual story arc. Now, here's the thing. This is Elektra being broken down to the point where she kind of wished that she was dead. Yes, you heard that right. She's been broken down by a new group of characters to the point where she's going to wish she is dead, but possibly going to change her life for what could be the betterment of her own life. Now, with all that information being said, let's go ahead and jump into issue number 10, the prelude of this story arc called Introspective. Now, let me just say that issue number 10 is not really that great, but we still need it to kind of lead into the main story arc. So, in getting into the opening pages of issue number 10, we do pick up with Elektra arriving back into America, New York. Now, she's flying into the country, so she has to go through the usual questions all like, hey, why are you here in America? How long are you going to be here? Those kind of questions. But after being able to ask those questions and also being able to steal a cab from somebody else who already had that cab, she does head over to her hotel. Now, after getting that cab, she does head over to a nearby hotel. Now, something I should probably mention is that for Elektra, at each of the stops she's going to make in this chapter alone, she's going to use different kinds of names to stay undercover. So when she does arrive at this hotel, we do learn that she's going to name Salvatore. Now, when she walks in, it does seem like she is a regular there. Now, the front desk, he's trying his best to give her that great customer service. But for Elektra, she's not really the nicest person to talk to, but she does get checked in. She goes to her room. After going to her room, she comes back down and he tells her, you have a message that was left behind. He hands her the envelope and she goes on her way to her next stop. We do see her go to Subway. When she dug in the Subway, she does open up her message and the message says just a number. 32. And that's going to be really important for the ending of this chapter. But she does continue on with her day. But then she heads over to a club. Now, we're not technically told what this guy does for Elektra. All we're kind of told is that, like, he's able to get her a place. And we're kind of left to believe that she may use the place for storage or possibly a safe house. Now, while you have Elektra and this Danny guy trying to make a deal at the club, you do have Danny say, hey, it seems like you have been followed. And we do see 3 guys behind her. And so you do have Elektra leave the club. And when she does, she's being followed by those 3 guys. And well, those 3 guys are instantly killed off by Elektra. Only takes her like a few seconds to kill them all. And then she goes on with her day. But now we pick up with Elektra meeting up with a woman known as Dee. Now, Dee was the one who had sent that message to her earlier at the hotel with the number 32. It's a way for her to access this kind of like hideout for this person Dee, the home of Dee. Now, for Elektra, she thought the reason why Dee had contacted her is because she had some work for Elektra. But you have Dee say, no, I don't have any work for you. Really, instead, the reason why I called you here is because I'm telling you, you have too much heat on you right now. Interpol, SHIELD, and the list goes on. Too many people want your head at the moment. And unfortunately, that makes it hard for the different people who give out contracts who want to hire you. Because now you are told as somebody who's unhireable because you have too much heat. If you have too much heat, you're going to bring that heat on us as well. Now, for Elektra, she can't believe what she's hearing. But before her and Dee are able to continue on with their conversation, bam, Dee is sniped and killed. Now you have Elektra being able to take out the sniper, and she does leave the home of Dee. But for Elektra, it's kind of like, is that true? Like, do I have too much heat on me? Do too many people out there want me dead? And with that kind of heat, will I ever be able to get another contract job again? And so for Elektra, she has entered the unemployment phase of her life. But now it's time for us to actually talk about the story arc that I really do love by Greg Rucka. Because you do have Elektra walk into this bar in the opening pages of Elektra issue number 11. Now, when she does walk into the bar, she's confronted by all these guys. And when they see her, they want to fight her. Really, the first guy goes to her, gets killed off just like that, gone in a second. And then she says more. It's kind of like she's begging to fight against people. She's begging to kill people. And that is going to be really important for the story arc. But now we have to jump back 1 month ago where we do pick up with Elektra in New York. Now, this is her just getting the newspaper, right? But when it comes to Greg's run, it was established that for Elektra, most of the people try to contact her by using the newspaper, by leaving messages on the newspaper for her to find and say, okay, cool, this person right here wants to hire me to kill somebody. That's great. But the problem is, when she goes to check the newspaper, there's nothing there for her, which basically means no one is trying to hire her at the moment. But then we see her go to Miami 3 weeks prior from the opening pages of this chapter, where you do have Elektra going to a cyber cafe to use their computer to see if maybe somebody had sent her a message by email to say like, hey, we need your help. Hey, we have a contract for you. But once again, when she goes to that computer, there's nothing there for her. The trend continues on. 2 weeks prior from the opening pages of this chapter where we pick up with Elektra in a hotel room, just continuing to wait for an email to come through. And we see by this point, it's driving her mad. The fact that she has not been able to actually receive any kind of work from somebody out there who would usually hire her for some kind of work. But then out of nowhere, her computer does go off. She runs over to the computer to only see is one of those like I call sex worker ads, emails. But either way, she's once again, disappointed because she's not able to get a job. And really, when we jump forward to 12 days prior from the present moment, we see that Elektra has gotten so desperate that she has worked her way over to the people who had hired other people to contract her out. So for example, if you were somebody who needed some help, like you wanted someone dead, you will call up somebody who does the contract hiring, who would then call up Elektra to get the job done for you. But now it's Elektra cutting out the middleman and going to a direct source, hoping that person would have work for her. And so she does go confront this guy who apparently she helped out in the past. But the guy tells her like, listen, I don't do contract work. Like if I needed something done, I call up someone to contact you to make the contract. I don't do that kind of work. And unfortunately, I don't have any work for you at the moment. The trend continues on. We see that day after day, she's going to different people, hoping to find somebody who would give her the chance to just have some kind of work. But again, the trend continues on. Each and every single person tells her like, no, 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 like we have no work for you. Please leave us alone. But then we jump to the point where you have Elektra go to this dojo where she does find the sensei of the place training his class. Now, this is Elektra hitting the point where it seems like she has to fight. She has to battle. She has to see if she still has it as well. The ability to be an assassin, the ability to be a fighter. And so you have Elektra going up against the dojo. Now, she goes up against the sensei of the dojo. Now, while going up against him, she takes him out in a matter of seconds. Even though she knew that she'll be able to do that, it kind of like gives her a breathing moment. Like it pleases her because it still shows she still has it in her. And then she leaves. Now, while she is leaving, somebody was watching her. And this person is working for another character, a character going by the name Lock. And he'll become very important in this story arc. But now we are able to jump back to the present day, where we do pick up with Elektra after she had taken out every single person in that bar. But then she is confronted by a guy. Now, this is the same guy we saw at the tail end of the last section, the guy who works for Mr. Locke. And really, speaking of Mr. Locke, he's able to enter the room, confront Elektra, and say, hey, listen, I did this to you. I knew that sooner or later you would get to this point right here. I had this plan in motion for 4 years. And now to see you mentally broken, physically broken, I am now able to go on to the next step of my plan. And that is the end of issue number 11, and we jump into the next chapter. And so then we jump into issue number 12. Now, when we do, we see Elektra being drugged and also being put inside a vehicle by Mr. Locke and also his assistant. And then we see the two guys take Elektra over to what seems to be the home of Mr. Locke. Now, by the end of this section, we kind of get an idea why this man is coming after Elektra for. Because apparently she has done something to him. Well, we already knew that, but really we learned that Elektra had killed off someone he loved. Now we're kind of left to wonder, what is he going to exactly do to Elektra? Like, yes, he's going for revenge, but what kind of revenge is he going for, to be more exact? So then we see Mr. Locke take Elektra into some kind of media room to kind of show her some kind of movie or film that he had put together for her. Now, when he does walk into the room, he's all like, hey, Elektra, how are you? And we get the idea that she's still heavily drugged, like she's very loopy, to the point where they're kind of able to talk to her, but also show her this movie that they have put together for her. Now, we do learn his actual name is Jeremy Locke, and Jeremy is going to be, like I said, very important for this video. So you have Locke say, listen, for this to work, I need you to focus. Even though you're heavily drugged, I need you to watch this movie. And for Elektra, technically, she does not have a choice here. And so she's focused. And he begins to show her this film that he had put together. Really more like a slideshow, be more exact. And so then we jump into his slideshow, right? And so the first slide he shows is a picture of her and her father. Now, we've been told that Elektra and her father were very close. Now, this book alone is going to give us a better idea of what that relationship was actually like between Elektra and her father. But he goes to the next slide, and the next slide is her being in gymnastics and doing a great job there. And so we're still continuing this happy trend, right? But then we get into the third slide. In the third slide, is when her father had died. And that really did a number to Elektra. And so with her being drugged, but also kind of seeing this, she goes in this phase where she's freaking out because she hates the idea of being reminded of her father. But the drugs are kind of bringing her emotions to a level 10. She is heavily saddened with the idea of seeing the picture of her father's body being carried out by the police. But for Jeremy, he says, no, you are not going to stop looking at this. For this to work, you have to continue to watch what I am going to show you. The next slide is very important for you, Elektra. And the next slide is him showing the moment where Elektra was killed off by Bullseye. Now, that is a really important moment because we thought as fans back then that she was dead, but then she was brought back to life. And so for Jeremy, he said, you were dead. You should be dead right now, but you're not dead. You're alive again. You were given a second chance in life, a second life to be more exact. And so for Jeremy, that is going to be really important when it comes to him working on the mind of Elektra. Then you have Jeremy show her a photo of her after she had came back to life, where it seemed that she was on a mission, where she had killed off 12 people. Now, for Jeremy, when he shows her the first photo, it does seem like it's just her fighting. And for Elektra, it's what she loves. She loves the idea of fighting. And so while she was fighting against all those different guys and seeing that photo again, it brought excitement to her. But Jeremy said, you weren't fighting. Next slide. Bam. You were killing. You killed off all those people right there just to get to your target. It's him saying, no, you're not out there fighting against bad guys. No, you're not out there just fighting random people. You're out there being a monster. You're out there being a killer. And then when he goes into the next few slides, it continues to show her different photos of when she had went on different missions to kill off a certain person. But of course, people had gotten her way. They were killed off. The ones who got in her way, including her targets. And it's him saying, look here, look here, look here. You're a killer. You're a killer. You're a killer. That's all you are. You are a killer. That's all you're good for. And for Elektra, again, with her being drugged, her emotions are on level 10, but she begins to freak out and wanting to break out and really attack Jeremy, kill off Jeremy, and then try to break away. And so she tries her best. The drugs are somewhat slowing her down, but for Jeremy, his assistant comes right in time to help him out, to bring her back down, but to also give her another dose to make her calm down again, to bring her back to that calm level so that they're able to continue on with their so-called treatment. So once you have Elektra wake back up, we begin to learn why Jeremy is doing all of this for. And the reason why? Because he lost the woman he loves, because of Elektra. And no, she was not her target. You see, for Elektra, she had a different target. And what she was going to do was to kill off her target. She put enough poison on a piece of paper, and her target was going to touch that paper. That poison was going to enter through his skin to kill him off just like that. Now, for Elektra, she thought, okay, you know what? I'll put enough poison to kill off one person. And even though he did die, some of that poison was still there on that paper. And so when it came to Jeremy's wife, she found that paper. She touched the paper. She got the poison, and she died 17 days later. This is Jeremy saying, look at you. You are a killer. You are a monster. But you're also killing off innocent people who were not technically involved in your crusade to go out and get different targets to make money. Your targets are your targets, but innocent people are now being killed off just for you to get to your targets. And so for Jeremy, he wants to teach her a lesson. Now, he's not going to kill her at all. Instead, he's going to leave her out in the middle of the desert. And the reason why? Because he says, I'm not a killer. I am not a murderer like you. But instead, I want you to realize what you are. You are a monster. You are a killer. And you do not deserve to live at all. And so he leaves her out in the middle of the desert. And the reason why? Because he's kind of hoping that one, the desert will kill her, or at least two, she'll kill herself off. Because now she realized that she's truly a horrible person. And so getting into the next chapter, we do pick up with Elektra just walking through the desert day and night, just walking and walking. And it seems like she doesn't want to die just yet, but that's going to change as we go through this chapter alone. But getting back over to Jeremy Locke, we see that he was not the only person who was trying to come after Elektra. You see, we do learn that there were other people who were also part of the planning. So you have characters like Nolan Curtis, Colonel Liam Fisher, and also Valerie Vasson. Now, these three characters, they're very upset with Jeremy because they wanted to kill Elektra. Like, they wanted him to capture her, bring her here, they go there, and then they kill her off just like that. But to hear that he let her go out in the middle of the desert because he does not want to be labeled as a murderer, he's kind of like, no, I have a different plan in mind for her. And really, he tells them, like, I told you guys, I will not be involved in her death in that kind of way. Like, I'm not going to be the one to pull the trigger. If she dies out there in the desert, fine, cool. If she kills herself, fine, cool. but I will not pull a gun to kill off the person, even though she hurt you guys, and she also hurt me as well. I am not going to be labeled as a killer like she is. But getting back over to Elektra, you have Elektra continuing to walk in the desert. Now, as she's walking through the desert, she's then confronted by a snake. Now, you would think that she would allow the snake to go ahead and kill her off. She does not. Instead, she actually captured a snake. And this is going to show us that, yes, Elektra has reached that point where she's actually considering to killing herself. Now, I want to jump back over to Jeremy and to his crew as well, the other people who were also involved in the planning, because we get a better idea. The crew is not really actually happy with Elektra being free because every single person had lost somebody close to them in some kind of way. For example, for the colonel, he lost a group of men. That was kind of his crew. They were all killed off by Elektra. For Valerie, she lost her husband. You know, the trend continues on that each person in this group had lost someone or multiple people to Elektra. And so because of that, they're kind of like, no, she deserves to die for what she has done. And so this kind of leads into the other members of this group beginning to work away from Jeremy. They're kind of like, no, what you did is wrong. You took our money, took our plan, and changed it for your betterment. And that right there is not okay at all. But I want to jump back over to Elektra because you have Elektra still with that snake. Now, for Elektra, while being with the snake, like I said earlier, she has now entered that part of her mind where she's okay with the idea of dying. She's okay with allowing the snake to bite her and kill her off, except when she goes to let the snake go, the snake runs away because the snake was hella freaked out for what she has done to it. And so for Elektra, it's kind of like, dang, I finally had a way to get out of this life. That snake was going to grant my wish. But it also shows that Elektra is not really up to par to kill herself. And so she's kind of hoping that something or someone will actually give her that pleasure. Now, we do a small quick check-in with Jeremy, and we do see that, well, Jeremy is still with the same people, and they're kind of still talking about what to do with him, but to also do with Elektra. Now, with Jeremy, he does tell them like, hey, listen, if you want to find out where Elektra is at, she's at this location right here in the middle of the desert. And so we kind of see the other members of this group kind of considering going out there in the middle of the desert to find Elektra to just bring her back over to where they are, or possibly find her and just kill her off. But when we go back over to Elektra, we do see her continuing to walk through the desert. Now, here's a big catch. You see, as she is walking through the desert, she begins to have this flashback of her father. Now, we were left to believe at first that her father and her were very close. Instead, this flashback kind of says that's not true. Her father used to abuse her. You see, when she was learning how to be a great gymnast, every single time she made a mistake, he would beat on her and then kind of be like, hey, listen, I'm sorry for what I did to you, but I had to do it as a way to keep you going. And so after having that flashback, we kind of see that she looks at her father as a monster, but she also sees herself as a monster as well. And then she falls into the sand of the desert. Now, I want to jump back over to Jeremy real quick. And the reason why, because you have Jeremy now talking to his assistant, and his name is Philip Carson. Now, for Philip Carson, he wants to know why his boss, Mr. Locke, did not just go ahead and hand over Elektra to the police. And also, they have the evidence as well. Once they had captured her, they should have gave her over to the police, but also gave that evidence as well. She would have been locked up. But he said, listen, all that evidence we had on her, it's not good enough to have her locked away. But also, that is not my end goal for Elektra. And so we kind of learned that for Mr. Locke here, Jeremy, he has a different goal in mind for Elektra. The question is right now, what is that goal? Now, when it comes to the other member of the inner circle, the four people who came together and said, hey, you know what? We are going to get revenge against Elektra. The other three said, you know what? You messed up, Locke. You should have killed her. And because you did not kill her, we are now going to step in. We're going to find her and we're going to kill her. Now, let's not forget that one of the members of the inner circle is a colonel. And so it does seem like he's part of some army. We're not technically told if he is part of an army or some kind of private group, but either way, his men were able to find Elektra just like that out in the middle of the desert. And he tells guys, keep your distance, but watch her. Will be there very soon. And so now you have the rest of the inner circle working their way over to where they are at and to hopefully kill off Elektra once and for all. And so as we enter the 5th chapter of the story arc, we actually do see Jeremy being told that, hey, they found her. And so now he knows what comes next. That one, she is alive, but two, she might be killed off by the other members of this inner circle very soon. Now, I want to jump back over to Elektra because remember, at the end of the last chapter, she was only found by a few guys who worked with the colonel, and the colonel is one of the members of the inner circle who wanted to kill her. And so you have these guys kind of just messing with her body while she is mostly knocked out. Not completely, because the longer they continue to mess with her, well, she slowly starts waking up again. And so by the end of the section, she is fully awake. And so by the time you have the inner circle arrive at that location, they find all the men who were supposed to just watch Elektra all killed off. They all have been murdered by her. Guys, I said murdered by her. And so when they arrive, they're freaking out. But they also realize that she has taken all the gear of one of the guys, including a radio, which means that she can overhear any calls on their radios at the moment. Now, when you do have the inner circle arrive, she starts shooting at them. Now, two members of the inner circle, they were able to get to cover, but one of them, he was not, and he was shot in the knee multiple times by Elektra. And so he's kind of left out there just trying his best to crawl over to the other two who found some cover. But they're now technically sitting ducks. Now, the colonel was able to call in another team to hopefully help out with this kind of situation. And really, it does not work at all because you do have the other team arrive, right? They arrive with a helicopter. You think like, okay, cool. You have your chopper. Maybe, just maybe you can get out of there. No. Elektra takes out the pilot just like that. The chopper, it crashed and burned. So there goes their only way out. And so now the third team has to do their best to protect the inner circle group right now who had decided to come after Elektra. And so you have Elektra just go ahead and kill off every single member of this third team that came in thinking they should be able to actually handle her. And it really shows that, hey, Elektra is not in that same mind state as she was earlier in this story arc. Like right now, she's back to her old ways again, and she's taking everyone out who tried to come at her. But after taking out the entire third team, it's once again just now the last two surviving members of the inner circle just stuck out there in the middle of the desert. And really, it's not the last two surviving members of the inner circle because the guy got shot in the leg earlier is still alive, but you do have Elektra take out the colonel. And when she does that, she gives the last two members of the inner circle a fair chance to hopefully make it back to some kind of city nearby in the desert area, because the last two now is a guy who can not walk at all, and the other person is just a woman who wanted revenge against Elektra because, well, she killed off her husband. But now for Elektra, her new main target is to go after Jeremy once again. And so she is able to make it all the way back over to his house. And this leads us into the final chapter of today's video. And so as we get into the final chapter for today's video, at first, it does seem like Elektra is going to kill off Jeremy. Now, the reason why she's going to kill him off is kind of like first, the whole idea that he did drug her, he did kidnap her, and he did kind of leave her out in the middle of the desert. Yes, that was all his fault. But she also believes that he was the one who had sent those soldiers after her. He says, no, that was not me. That was not my doing. Like, that was someone else in my group who felt like you deserved to die. Now, that right there is really important because it's not him saying like, hey, I want to kill you. Hey, I think you should be killed off. Hey, you know what? You are a horrible person. Instead, it's him saying, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to change you. And this leads into what he is trying to do for the character of Elektra. I want you guys to think back to what I said earlier when it came to Jeremy. He said, listen, you had 2 lives, and both of those lives, you were a murderer. It's time for you to change. That's the whole point of this. He wants to make Elektra a better person in this world, because in both of her lives, she was a killer. She was an assassin. It's time to be something else. But he had to mentally break her down to kind of show her what he wanted her to see. Like, hey, you are a great assassin. You are a great fighter. But what if you use those skills for something else besides just killing? Like, yes, you can fight against people, but why do you have to kill? Now, for Elektra, she's still at that point where she wants to die. She's even begging Mr. Locke's assistant to go ahead and kill her off. But they said, no, we're not going to kill you. We're here to change you. We're here to make you a better person. And so the book kind of ends with her now staying with Locke, staying with Carson as well. And hopefully we can see a change in Elektra. What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so it's time for us to continue our coverage over Greg Rucka's Elektra run. And now we pick up with a 2-part story arc called Standing Outside the Temple in the Rain. Now, this 2-part story arc does take place in Elektra issue number 16 and 17 in the 2001 Elektra series. Now, this also kind of continues what we saw at the tail end of our last video. Let me explain. You see, there was a character known as Jeremy Locke who had lost his wife thanks to Elektra. Now, when I say he lost his wife, I'm not saying that she was one of Elektra's targets. What I'm saying is that she was an innocent person that was killed off on accident when it came to Elektra going after one of her actual targets. But either way, for Jeremy, he began to learn more and more about Elektra and kind of realized that, well, she's a killer. She's a monster. She is an assassin. But for Jeremy, he feels like he can actually change Elektra. And the reason why, because he says, listen, you died once. You died by the hands of Bullseye, but then you were brought back to life thanks to the hand. And the problem is you use your second chance in life to pick up where you left off at, to be a killer, going around killing off people left and right. And so for Jeremy, his goal is to begin this process to hopefully change Elektra into a better person, somebody who's not just a flat out killer, a flat out bloodlust crazy person out there in the world. And so now we are beginning to see the change in Elektra, and it starts with this 2-part story arc. Now, we do see that in the opening pages of this story arc, we're not actually seeing Jeremy go out of his way to figure out how to fix Elektra. It is actually his assistant, somebody known as Philip Carson. Now, Carson apparently knows someone, a sensei, who can actually teach Elektra to go down the right path. And so we see him actually talking to this person. And apparently, this person at first kind of like, I don't know. Show me what you got. But then after seeing a few photos of Elektra, this person is actually intrigued to begin to see Elektra work, to kind of see if they want to, teach her. And so when we jump over to Elektra, we see Jeremy say, hey, listen, Philip found somebody for you, and I need you to get in the car right now and come with me so that you are able to see this person. And so as we go into the last few pages of this actual book, we do pick up with Elektra, Jeremy, and Philip going to the dojo of this new sensei. Now, we do learn that his actual name is Mr. Drake. Now, Drake here can see that Elektra is a great fighter, a great assassin. She has a lot of skills, but he also realized she has no heart. And she also has much to learn. And so for Mr. Drake, he's kind of like, you know what? Let's fight. And you have the two characters actually fighting. But while fighting, you can see that Mr. Drake is on a whole new level. And so unfortunately for Elektra, she's not able to actually go toe-to-toe with Drake. It's really more Drake just playing with her. But while playing with her, he begins to call out different names. Now, all the different names that he is calling out are different people that she had killed off over the years. And so it's him saying like, hey, you may have killed off that person and that person and that person, but like you went after people who were below your level. I'm somebody who's above your level, who can give you an actual challenge, somebody who can easily take you down. Now, for Elektra, she does not believe that. She believes that she can win, but he has to teach her that lesson. And so you have Elektra try to use her weapon against Drake, and Drake uses his hands and bends the blade on her weapon. And he's all like, see, you still have a lot to learn. That was a sharp blade coming right at me, and I was able to literally bend it just like that. A technique that I see you don't know how to do yet. And once you have Elektra see that, she realized that Drake is, above her. And so she gets down on her knees and begins to ask him to begin training her. And he says, hell no. And he walks away. So as we dive into the last chapter for today's video, we do pick up with Elektra, Philip, and also Jeremy leaving, except you have Elektra say no. She is staying. And the reason why? Because she wants to convince, she wants to prove to Mr. Drake that she'll be a great student to take in. And so she begins to stand outside his actual dojo. The whole idea of the story arc being called standing outside the temple in the rain is because of this moment right here. She is standing outside in the rain, hoping for Mr. Drake to actually accept the offer to begin teaching her. Now, when you have Drake walk outside his dojo, he sees Elektra. And when he does, he knows what she wants. He knows that she wants him to accept her offer to make her become his student, to learn how to fight. But for Drake, he's all like, no, I don't want to teach you. I don't want anything to do with you. And so he walks away. Now for Elektra, she's not going to take no for an answer. And so you have Elektra begin to follow Drake around. Now while doing that, you did have Elektra realize that Drake is trying to spend time with different people of his neighborhood. And so because of that, she kind of realized, okay, maybe that's what he wants me to do. Maybe he wants me to be completely different, to not be that killer person. Now, she's on the right path, but at the same time, she's not completely getting it because she also believes that if she does some kind of work outside of fighting, outside of killing, then maybe Drake will accept her. And so you have Elektra trying to paint his building for him, but you have Drake said, no, that's not it. And also, you need a lot of help to fix your soul. And so for Elektra, she continues on to hopefully convince Drake to take her in. But then you have Drake sit down with Elektra and say, listen, the reason why I can't take you in because you have no room for me to teach you. Meaning that thanks to the hand and also your past trainers, you are completely filled of knowledge, of your knowledge. Now I said your knowledge. And the reason why, because it's Drake saying, if you want to learn from me, you have to make room for me. But also, my kind of training is completely different than what you have gone through in the past. And so you have Drake once again walk away. Now, there were a bunch of kids who kind of been around Elektra the entire time she's been outside Drake's dojo. Either way, when it came to kids, they had kicked a soccer ball at Elektra and she was able to grab it in time. Now, for the kids, they believe that she may lash out at them, but except instead, she begins to play with them. And that was Drake's big point of his lesson. If you want to learn from me, you have to make room for me. You have to get rid of what you have learned in the past. The whole idea of being a killer, the whole idea of being a weapon for other people. Once you have made room for me, then I can begin to teach you. And so right now, because you have Elektra not lashing out at the kids, but actually playing with them, you have Drake accept the offer. So you know what? It's now time for your training. And this is okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over Elektra. Now, technically, we have been covering Greg Rucka's run on the character for a short while now. Now, something I should also mention is that Greg Rucka's run actually takes place in the middle of the 2001 Elektra series that was really started off by Brian Michael Bendis. The problem was Brian Michael Bendis did one story arc for Elektra and then he left the title completely, which then led Marvel saying, hey, Greg, do you want to take over? And he said yes. Now, for Greg, he did a great job, but the main goal for Greg was to take the character of Elektra and give her a new purpose. The whole idea of saying she's not just a top-notch assassin, that she can be something else, something better for the actual world, to lead her in a better direction for the actual character. Now, for Greg Rucka, his run was very short on Elektra. What I mean is that this is going to be the last Greg Rucka story for Elektra, because right after this story arc, somebody else took over. Now, we might go ahead and just continue our coverage over Elektra so that we are able to say that we have covered the entire 2001 series, because it's only like 35 or 36 issues, and technically we're already in the 20s by this point, thanks to Greg Rucka. Now, something else I should also mention is that for this whole story we're going to do right now, originally it was a 4-part story arc, but then I guess things happened behind the scenes. They needed a 5th chapter, so technically it is a 5-part story arc. Now, something else I should also mention is that in the middle of the story arc, part 2 and part 3, it is actually done by a different artist. Now, for me personally, I did not really like the artwork done in part 2 and part 3. For me, part 1, 4, and 5, beautiful. 2 and 3, kind of felt a tad bit weird, and honestly kind of wondering why in the world they did that for. But it was only used as a way to kind of tell the backstory for the current sensei for Elektra, better known as Drake. Either way, we can now officially dive into the final story arc for Greg Rucka's run on Elektra. Now, the opening pages for the first chapter that does take place in Elektra issue number 18 is really kind of picking up where the first story arc for Greg Rucka, or really the first major story arc for Greg Rucka, had officially left off at. Let me explain. You see, in that first major story arc for Greg, he introduced a character known as Jeremy Locke. Now, Jeremy Locke was actually a character who had lost his wife thanks to Elektra. You see, see, when it came to Elektra, she is or was a top-notch assassin that could be hired. And so somebody hired her to go after one of her targets, which she actually did. The problem was Jeremy's wife kind of got killed off by just being nearby the actual scene. And so because of that, for Jeremy, his main goal was to change Elektra into a better person by putting her through a process saying, listen, you had 2 chances in your life, and unfortunately, you used both of your chances to be this killer. Why not try to be something good for the world? Why not try to no longer be a killer in this world? And so for him, his main goal was to actually change her. Now, we did learn later on in that story arc that he was actually working with 3 other people who also wanted to get revenge against Elektra because they also lost people close to them because of her. Now, one of those 3 guys was actually a colonel, and he was able to bring in a small army of soldiers to kind of help out to go kill off Elektra. Now, for Jeremy, he didn't want Elektra to die. But the other 3, they wanted her to die. And so they went after her after Jeremy had let Elektra go. And so when it came to the colonel and his armed forces, well, they got murdered completely by Elektra. They did not stand a chance at all against her. And so as we dive into the final story arc for Greg Rucka, it picks up where that story arc really left off at. Because as we dive into the open page for the story arc, we pick up with some people examining the dead bodies of those soldiers that were killed off by Elektra in that story arc. But while they're doing that, they have no idea that technically they're being watched, or not really being watched, but somebody else is there also examining those bodies as well. Somebody who belongs to the hand. Now, this guy, he's able to actually hide his presence, so no one truly knows that he is there. But while he goes to examine all the dead bodies, he was able to realize that these people were killed off by Elektra. And so it kind of tells us the hand is beginning to come after Elektra very soon. Now we do jump over to Elektra, and we see her with a character known as Drake. Now Drake was a character that Greg Rucka had introduced in an earlier story arc, who's right now the current sensei for Elektra. You see, for Drake, her main goal is to change Elektra away from what the hand in the chase had taught Elektra over the years. The whole idea of you're an assassin, you're a killer, you love violence, you love blood, you love fighting. Like, get away from those things right there and going into a new direction in her life. And so for Drake in the last story arc, she had to tell Elektra that your body and mind has been completely filled up by the hand in the chase. If you want me to be able to teach you, to train you, to make you a better person, you have to clear your mind. Now, for Drake, she realized that she can't change the fighting style of Elektra, but she can change the mindset of Elektra. And so for Elektra, even though she's kind of opened up her mind to allow Drake in, she's still kind of holding on to what the hand and also the chase had taught her. And so it's up to Drake to kind of move her away from those things. Now I want to jump over to Valerity and also Nolan. Now these are 2 characters that Greg gave us back in that major story arc where these 2 characters were part of that inner circle who had lost people thanks to Elektra and they wanted to get revenge against her. Now as we saw, Jeremy was not really down with the idea of killing Elektra, but the rest of the group, they were down with killing her, and so they went after her. Now for Elektra, she let these 2 guys live. The problem is that for Nolan, he has let everything go. Like, he is not down with the idea of continuing to hunt down Elektra. But for Valerity, she wants to continue to hunt down Elektra because she had lost a loved one because of that woman. And so for her, she's kind of like, how can you just give up so easily? Now, she also mentions that she can tell that Jeremy had fallen in love with her, Elektra, and that is why he let her go. Now, I want you to actually hold on to that for the later chapters of this story arc. But while you have the 2 characters actually talking, they are then confronted by 3 members of the hand. Really just one at first. The other two come in later. But for this one right here, his main goal is to gather information from Nolan and also Valerity's mind to kind of help him figure out where in the world can he find Elektra. And so after he's able to go through their minds, he begins to learn everything he needs to know. Not everything, but a good start in his adventure to hopefully find Elektra. Now, I want to jump over to Drake and Elektra, who are currently at a playground right now. Now, this playground has been completely trashed over time. And so for Elektra and Drake, their main goal is to actually clean up the place. Now, this leads into Drake kind of giving us the origin of Elektra. Not the complete origin, but the key points we need to understand what Drake is trying to do for the actual character, better known as Elektra. You see, for Drake, she does bring up the fact that Elektra had joined the Chase. Now, the Chase is another organization out there that usually fights against the Hand. They are literal enemies to one another. Now, the thing was for the Chase is that when they took Elektra in, they taught her their ways. But then after a while, they had kicked her out. Now, after she was kicked out, she had joined the Hand. Now, let's not forget, the Hand is a ninja organization, but they worship a demon better known as the Beast. Now, once you had Elektra join the Hand, her main goal was to dive into the darkness of the actual group, but not dive too deep into the actual darkness. She wanted to be a light to bring out the good in the actual Hand. The problem was, though, over time, she realized she could not fight her way out, and she became their perfect weapon, their perfect death. But then it got to a point where they no longer looked at her as the perfect death. They kind of looked at her as something different, not even a ninja, something completely wrong with her. But either way, for Elektra, she had left. Now, with her leaving, she now had the skills and the tricks from both organizations to use out against the world, against all her different targets, to become that top-notch assassin. And so while you have Drake bring up all these different facts, it's really more Drake saying, like, I know you very well, and I know you so well, you're going to be very surprised when I tell you my actual origin story. But for Elektra, she kind of believes that Drake is actually mocking her, making fun of her past life. But you have Drake say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm here to tell you I used to be part of the Chase as well. And so for Drake, is her saying, like, listen, you've been in the darkness for so long that you forgot what the light is like, what his life is like. And so you have Drake saying it's time to bring you out of that darkness, to turn you into what seems to be an actual human, not one of them. And so you didn't have the two characters being able to actually clean up the entire playground. But while you have Elektra believing that things are going great for her, she has no idea the Hand has now begun to hunt her down. And so when we jump back over to Nolan and Valerity, we kind of find out that they're both dead because the Hand was able to collect information about Elektra from their minds, and now they're moving on to someone else to get more information about Elektra to hopefully find her. But now we have to jump into the next chapter. Now, the next chapter, we actually pick up the three members of the Hand making their way over to the next location for them. Now, their actual names are Shadow, Thought, and Pain. Now, we don't need to know more about these actual characters. They're really only being used as a way to wrap up Greg's run on what he's trying to do with the character of Elektra. And that's really it. But either way, they do kill off this guy to take his vehicle so that they're able to get to their next location in a better amount of time. Now, I want to jump back over to Drake and Elektra. And you see the two characters right now trying to feed the homeless while working at this shelter. Now, while working there, you have Drake ask Elektra to tell a joke. Like, hey, you know, Elektra, tell a joke to make everyone happy here in the building. The problem is for Elektra is that she's still learning how to be a regular person. She's still learning how to have a normal conversation. And so to tell a joke is kind of like a huge step for her. And unfortunately, she's not really good at all when it comes to telling jokes. And so for Elektra, she feels embarrassed. But at the same time, it's Drake showing her like, hey, that's part of life. Like, it's part of being a human. being embarrassed when your jokes don't actually work out. Now, once they're able to get back over to the dojo, this kind of leads into the origin of Drake to kind of get a better understanding who she is. But before we are able to actually learn the actual origin of Drake, it kind of continues with the whole idea of Drake saying that Elektra, if you want to change, you have to open up. But for Elektra, it's hard to do that. Now, it's not her saying like it's the hand, it's the chase kind of holding on to me. It's really more her saying like, I did a lot of bad things in my past. Like I had killed off a lot of people, so many people, it can fill up the entire dojo that belongs to Drake. But for Drake, it's kind of like, you don't understand that I actually know what you're talking about. And so it's her saying, Elektra, the problem for you is that you're having a hard time letting go and you're having a lot of regret, but also you feel bad for everything you have done in the past. But that's also completely normal. Now, once you have the two characters kind of finish their fighting scene at the actual dojo, it's now time for Drake to say, here is my origin story to kind of show you that it is possible to actually change. It is possible to move on from the hand and also the chase as well. Now, to get into the actual origin of Drake, we have to jump back over to 1947. Now, she tells us that her father had fought in the war, and while being in Japan, he had met a group of people, and with that group of people, he had begun to learn different fighting styles. And so when he came back home to America, he began to teach his kids as well, starting off with James, and then James kind of teaching his sister in private. But either way, over time, his son James began to pick up everything his father had learned in Japan. And so after that, you then had Drake's father take both his kids back over to Japan to meet members of the chase. And once they met James, Drake's brother, they were kind of like, you know what? He'll be great for our actual group, and so will Drake's father. Now, Stick was there. And remember, when it comes to Stick, he's the guy who had trained Elektra, trained Daredevil, and most likely other characters out there as well. But Stick was there. And so now we are establishing that Stick had also trained Drake, but not just yet. You see, when it came to Drake and also her brother James and their father, when they had arrived at the temple for the chase, they only trained Drake's brother, James, and her father, not her. And the reason why? Because she was a girl, especially a black girl. Because in that time for Japan, they already hated the idea of white people kind of taking their culture. But now you have a black person coming in, it's extra hard. But you're a black woman, it's like 3 times hard for just a regular white person. And so they did not train her at all. They kind of kept her away to say, all you can do is just clean our dishes, clean our rooms, and that is it. Now, overnight, though, in the nighttime, her brother James would actually teach her the ways that he had learned from the chase. Except one of the nights they were out there training, Stick saw them. And we're now establishing that Stick knew way back then that Drake, when she was a young girl, when she arrived with her father and James at the temple of the chase, he knew that she was special. And so he said, we got a problem because you not allowed James to cheat somebody who's not actually part of our group, any of our techniques at all, and here you are training your sister. And so for Stick, he gave both Drake and James a test by saying, listen, because you were teaching her, one of y'all have to leave. One of y'all have to get kicked out. And so he said the last person standing will have to stay here while the other one gets kicked out. And so for Drake and James, they had to fight against an army of warriors from the chase. Now, by the end of that battle, James fell down. He's out. But Drake, she stood up. She stayed up, sorry. And so she was able to stay with the chase while you had, well, James being kicked out of the actual organization. Now, for Drake, she was able to stay there alongside with her father, but it was very short-lived. And the reason why, because she had killed off another member of the chase. Now, it was a complete accident, but she still broke a rule. And so she got kicked out as well. just like that. Now, like Elektra, she had joined the hand, kind of thinking that if she joins the hand, she'll be able to get back at the chase, but she also wanted to make sure that she did not go too far into the actual darkness the hand gives people, like Elektra tried to do in her own timeline. The problem was for Drake is that they put her inside a pit of darkness to fight against the darkness in her heart. And so while getting down there and fighting her opponent, she had killed off her brother. Now that was a huge moment for her, but it kind of did push her into the darkness the hand wanted her to have. And so once she had killed off her brother and once she became an actual member of the hand, it led to her fighting against some members of the chase. And she had killed off 4 members of the chase. And one of them was her father. So now she had killed off her brother and now she had killed off her father. And so after doing that, she kind of realized that she had to step away. The hand was bringing her down into their own darkness. And so for Elektra, back in the present day, she's wondering how can herself get to that point where Drake is at the moment. The whole idea of being able to be pulled out of that darkness. And you have Drake saying like, it's not going to be easy. At first, you have to want it. You have to want to have that ability to pull yourself out of the darkness. But once you do that, you then have to work at it. And so for Elektra, she begins to cry because she wants to leave that darkness behind. The whole idea of being part of the assassins, being part of the hand, part of the cast, being that killer who loves blood and violence. She wants to leave all of that behind. And so for Drake, she can tell that now Elektra is on that right path, but now she has to continue to go down that right path. But to wrap up this chapter, we do see the hand arriving at the home of Jeremy Locke. And of course, they're coming after Elektra. They need more information about her to figure out where exactly she is at. And so now we have to dive into the 3rd chapter where we actually pick up with a character known as Carson. Now remember, when it comes to Carson, he's kind of like the bodyguard / assistant for Jeremy Locke. And so Carson right now just by himself chilling, having a good old time relaxing. But then he's confronted by the hand. Now remember, the hand trying to find Elektra. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to go to each person that she had contact with in the last few days, weeks, or months to hopefully find the actual location of where she's hiding out at. And so you then have the hand being able to take down Jeremy and begin the process of going into his mind to figure out who to go to next to hopefully figure out where she could be at. And so now we jump back over to Elektra and Drake. Now this is Drake telling Elektra like, hey, you have officially graduated. Like you are officially done now. Now for Elektra, she cannot believe what she's hearing at the moment because she still believes that Drake still has to teach her more things about changing her life. But for Drake, it's kind of like, no, I only brought you in to put you on the path. It's now for you to take your path and push forward by yourself. I can no longer hold your hand, but also I already saw some things in you that has completely changed. And so for Elektra, the question is now, can she continue to go down the path that Drake has opened up for her to officially take? Now we jump back over to the hand and we see that Carson has been officially taken out, but you didn't have Jeremy there, now going through the actual same process that Carson went through. And so with the hand, they're diving deeper into the mind of Jeremy to figure out where in the world Elektra is actually at. And so while doing that, we're now establishing that for Jeremy, he had begun to fall in love with Elektra, which for me personally is kind of wild because honestly, he only found her because he wanted to change her because what she has done to his wife in the past. But that's really it. And so for me personally, it's kind of weird to see him fall in love with the character so fast. But Either way, you do have the hand being able to figure out that right now Elektra is with Drake. And so they take Jeremy to kind of use him as a way to get to Elektra. Now they believe that Carson is officially dead. But once you have the hand leave, you have Carson be able to get enough strength to pick up the phone to call Drake. And so as we jump back over to Elektra and also Drake, you have Drake continue to push Elektra away, kind of like, hey, this is your graduation. Matter of fact, here's some weapons I made for you to replace the ones I broke a while back. Now, these new weapons, they're not really made to kill. They're made to be used in battle, but more as a way to take down your opponents without actually killing them, to kind of show that Elektra is now going on a new path, a path more like a hero rather than a villain or anti-hero. Either way, while you have Elektra continue to pack her things up, the phone rings. It is Carson warning Drake to warn Elektra the hand is coming after them right now. Now for Drake, she says, leave now and I'll try my best to hold them off. But for Elektra, she's kind of like, no. If I had taken this path because of you, I am going to continue down the path. And on this path, that means I have to protect other people, people like you. And so now we're going to see Drake and also Elektra try to make that big stand against the hand when they do arrive. And so as we dive into the ending parts of the third chapter, we do pick up with the hand arriving at the dojo that belongs to Drake. Now, when they arrive, they come full force. They are planning to bring down the entire place, except when they walk into the actual building, well, they are actually confronted by Elektra and Drake, who are ready to go. And this leads into the fourth chapter. For me, the artwork does get a whole lot better. And so now we dive into the fourth chapter. Now, the fourth chapter, the first half of the fourth chapter is really more just Elektra fighting against the hand. It's her with Drake trying her best to fight against the hand and their army of soldiers that came with them. Now, while you have both sides fighting against each other, I really want to focus more on Elektra here, because Elektra, she's getting caught up in the actual battle, kind of letting her emotions control her body, control her mind, control her moves. Because you have Drake say, hey, Elektra, I need you to focus here. If we are going to be able to actually win this battle, to pull this off, we got to be on our A game. We got to be on the same page. But the problem is Elektra is not on the same page. She is not on her A game. She's getting caught up in the actual battle because the hand represents her past that she's trying to get rid of, trying to move away from. And so in the middle of the battle, she does get captured by the hand. Now, luckily for Elektra, Drake was there, and Drake was able to actually free her. But once you have Drake being able to save Elektra from the hand, we kind of see the hand kind of give us some hints of why they are here. One, it does seem like they want to bring Elektra back into the actual organization, but at the same time, it seems like they are very disappointed that when it comes to Elektra, that she has now been taught or trained by the betrayer. Of course, talking about Drake here. But you did have the hand reveal that they have Jeremy, and they say, listen, if you want him back, meet us in your last massacre area where you had your last massacre at. And of course, this is a callback to that major story arc that truly begun the run of Greg Rucka, where he tried to change the character, where she fought against the soldiers back in that major story arc, where this story had actually started off at. And so you have the hand leave with Jeremy, and so you have Elektra and Drake leave the dojo because it got caught on fire, it's burning down, and they have to get the heck out of there. Right after you have Elektra and Drake being able to get away from the actual dojo, we do learn that Drake has been poisoned. You see, when it came to Elektra letting her emotions take over, and when she was captured for a brief moment by the hand, it gave Drake the chance to save her life, but while doing that, Drake got poisoned. And so This is Drake dying right in front of Elektra. But she tells Elektra, listen, if you go after them, you have to make sure when you go at them, you can't go like you did in the dojo, letting your emotions take over your body. You have to go in there with your A game. You have to go in there knowing that you'll be able to actually take them down because you are a warrior. A warrior I have actually trained very well. But she also says a warrior does not fight just for fighting. A warrior fights for a cause. Know your cause before you go into that actual battle. And so then we jump over to Elektra meeting up with Carson. So now we know he's still alive for the time being. But you have Carson and her agree to work together to go after the Hand to hopefully save Jeremy before he's killed off by the Hand. And so you have the two get everything they need to make sure they have at least a fighting chance against the Hand. And so the last few pages of this chapter is really being used as a way to set up the final chapter of this book, but to also have the Hand kind of wondering, will Elektra actually show up to save the life of this man? And so you do have the Hand kind of wondering, like, does Elektra actually have feelings for her? Now, for me personally, she should not have any feelings for this guy at all in that kind of way because she barely knows him. And really, they only spent like 2 weeks together and that's really it. But either way, we do see her and Carson getting ready to fight against the Hand. He'll stay behind and be a sniper to kind of give her some cover while she goes down there to fight against the Hand to hopefully be able to save Jeremy's life. And this leads into the final chapter. And so now we are able to jump into the final chapter for today's video, where we do pick up with Elektra walking up to the Hand. Now, when she does, they're kind of wondering like, okay, Elektra, what are you here for? Like, are you here to rejoin us? Are you here to actually help us? Are you here to kill us? Are you here to save the life of this man who apparently loves you? Now, for Elektra, she kind of plays their game a tad bit, trying to say like, I'm here to be with you guys. But they want to make sure. And so when it comes to the big three of the Hand here at the moment, they send one of the big three over to read her mind. The problem is though, right when he tries to read her mind, Sniper takes him out just like that. Carson got her back, and they realize that this is a trap. Now, they do call in some lower level ninjas to help out the battle, but for Elektra, these lower level ninjas don't truly stand a chance at all. She is able to go toe to toe with them, but also with the backup with Carson being a sniper, she has the edge over the entire group. Now, when it comes to Carson, unfortunately, he has to reload. And so while he's trying to reload, but also trying his best to watch out for Elektra, the last two standing members of the Hand, the big three, one of them goes over to Carson and takes him out, while you have Elektra stay behind to fight against the other one. Now, the one she's fighting against, he begins to try to play with her mind, saying like, look, there goes your sniper. We had just killed him off. Like, you cannot win at all. We have the edge over you. Now, for Elektra, she's able to get rid of him, only leaving one behind. But she realized the one who had just killed off Carson came back, grabbed Jeremy, and went somewhere else in the desert. And so for Elektra, she has to follow him to hopefully save the life of Jeremy. And so once she's able to actually catch up to Jeremy and also the last member of the Hand, she kind of realized that she's in a position where she technically does not have a choice here when it comes to saving Jeremy, because he's now standing between her and also the last member of the Hand. And she knows if she moves, he's going to die. But at the same time, she's tired of the Hand coming after her. So what can you do? And so for Elektra, she says the only thing she can do is take her blade and take it through the chest of Jeremy as a way to stab the last member of the Hand who is trying to come after her. So she has no choice but to go ahead and sacrifice the man who she may or may not actually care for. And the book ends on that note. And so we're kind of left to wonder, will Elektra actually go down a new path? Or because of the death of Jeremy, will she go back down the old path again? Either way, this is where the book ends. And you're kind of left to wonder, what would Greg do if he was able to get another story out of this one right here? But yeah, this is the end for Greg Rucka's run on Elektra. So with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and okay, so getting back into our coverage over Elektra, we are actually going to pick back up with the 2001 series again. Now, technically, we're at the point where Greg Rucka is no longer the writer of the series. He did a small run on the character, which honestly was a great run, but after he left, Marvel wanted to continue the book. And so we had a new writer step in, and that was Robert Rodi. Now, Robert Rodi was not really trying to follow what Greg did with the actual character. Instead, it was Robert saying, let's take Elektra back to what she was, an assassin, a killer. She loves the idea of going after her different targets. And so, in his first two-part story arc, he kind of shows us that he is not going to follow Greg Rucka's work at all. And the reason why I'm saying that because the two-part story arc is actually called The Mark and the Job. Now, the two-part story arc is more like a POV situation where the first chapter, we actually see the POV of somebody being hunted down by Elektra, while the second chapter is the POV of her doing the hunting. It really shows that Rodi is not trying to follow Greg's work at all and bring Elektra back in the line of being an assassin who takes different jobs to kill off different people across the world. And so getting into the opening pages of today's story arc, we actually do pick up with a character known as Mr. Prebble. Now, Mr. Prebble is going to be our POV character and kind of show us what it feels like to be hunted down by Elektra across the world. Now, by this point, we actually see Mr. Prebble going to some building that he owns, but apparently he had hired a security team that could hopefully protect him from Elektra. Now, we do learn the actual leader's name of this crew, and his name is Bauer. Now, Bauer's not really going to be that important for today's story arc, but he is going to be around and kind of help us see why Mr. Prebble had officially given up when it comes to trying to get away from Elektra. Because once you have Prebble go inside the actual building, you have Bauer say, okay, so you know what? We made sure the entire place is locked down. We got a plan to protect you. Like, all you need to do is stay in this room right here, but stay away from the windows. And also make sure you don't drink anything. But for Mr. Prebble, he's kind of like, listen, I've been on the run for a good while now. And I'm going to tell you right now, no matter what you do, you can't stop her. And matter of fact, you are the first team I hired to actually protect me. I had hired other people to protect me earlier, but they all had failed when it came to protecting me. Now, for Bauer, he's kind of like, what do you mean? And this leads into Mr. Prebble kind of telling us about each team he hired to protect him from Elektra and how they all had failed. Now, here's the thing. You see, you have Mr. Prebble actually tell us that he had hired 14 different crew to protect him from Elektra in the last 6 days. But apparently, in those 6 days, she had killed off every single member of all those different crews who are trying to stop her. Now, when it comes to Prebble, he's going to give us some different examples, but the key one kind of showed him that Elektra is an unstoppable force. And the reason why I'm saying that because the first example he gives us that he had basically hired a guy known as Trask. And when it came to Trask, he realized the best way to actually protect him from Elektra was to build a safe room. Now, this safe room only had one way in, the front door, or the main door, sorry. But the main door also had some high-tech security on it to keep people out. And there was no vents to use to sneak into the actual room. And so to Trask and also Prebble, they believed they had the best game plan to stop Elektra. But apparently she was able to break into that facility, find a safe room, break open the door, kill off Trask. But luckily for Trask, he was able to grab Prebble and tell him to get away while Elektra, well, killed him off. And that leads into the next example of Elektra hunting him down and killing off another crew. Now, the second example he gives us that after he had lost that crew he had with Trask, he hired somebody else that was actually very close to Bauer. Not really close, but Bauer actually knew the guy. And for Bauer, he's kind of like, if you hire this friend of mine, then that means you hired someone really great and you should have been well protected. But you have Prebble say, yeah, I was not really that well protected like we had thought, because he then went to a different property that he had owned. Now, this property had a bunch of tunnels underneath it. Now, here's the thing. There's only one way to get out of the tunnels up into the actual house, a freight elevator that leads into the garage of the actual house. And so for Mr. Prebble and the crew he hired that time, they believe that there's only one way in. That means they can guard that one way to keep her out. But the problem is, though, that means there's only one way out of the actual facility if things go south. But also the caves. If you cannot see in the caves, it makes you an easy target for Elektra. And so for Prebble, he tells us that the guy he hired for that situation right there, they were all killed off in a matter of seconds. And luckily, once again, he was able to get away to hopefully hire another crew. And like I said, he's been on the run for 6 days and went through 14 different crews to protect him from Elektra. And that leads into the moment where you have Prebble actually tell Bauer who is chasing him down, that it is actually Elektra. And that kind of shows us that Bauer took the job because, well, it's good money. But at the same time, he had no idea who he was trying to protect Prebble from. And so now he knows. He's kind of like, wait a second. I'm guarding you from Elektra. Now, to Bauer and his crew, they can't believe that he's being chased down by Elektra, because it seems that most people in Marvel Comics believe that Elektra is dead. Like, she is basically a myth because she died a few years back, not really knowing that actually she's alive again and, well, she's chasing him down. Now, for Mr. Prebble, he's kind of like, no, she is not a myth. I have seen her in action. I have seen what she has done to all those past crew. And I'm telling you right now, even though you believe that you're the best kind of crew that I had hired, I'm telling you right now, you and your crew are going to die. You and your crew are going to fail because nothing can truly stop her. Now, the ending of this chapter is really more of Bauer and Prebble both realizing that the entire plan that Bauer had put together as a way to protect Prebble from Elektra is falling apart in a matter of minutes. And the reason why, because she's already there. She's already killing off different crew members that belong to Bauer's crew. She's already dismantling other things he set up to hopefully protect Prebble from her. Now, for Prebble, he's kind of like, listen, it's too late, and I realize after 6 days of running, there's no point of me running anymore because she is not going to give up, and sooner or later, she is going to kill me off. And so you have Prebble tell Bauer, you're fired. Like, I want to make sure that you actually survive. So get out of here now. Go home to your wife, your girlfriend, or your kids, whatever, but you have been officially fired. Now, for Bauer, he's not trying to give up. Matter of fact, he's saying, listen, you gave me this job. I'm going to make sure I actually finish the job. But you didn't have Prebble trick Bauer out of the room and lock the door behind him. And he says, no, you have been fired. Get the heck out of here before she appears. Now, while you have Bauer trying to get back into the room with Prebble, Elektra does appear, but she let Bauer go. And after letting him go, she goes into the room to kill off Mr. Prebble. Now, as she does walk into the room, he does offer her a drink, and really, we don't see her take that drink at the end of this chapter, but the next one. But either way, as she does walk into the room to kill him off, we kind of end the whole POV for Mr. Prebble to kind of see what it was like to be hunted down by Elektra for 6 days straight, to kind of realize that almost everything you try to stop her was not going to work at all. Now, the next chapter, like I said earlier, is going to be her POV, what it's like to be the hunter, not the hunted. But either way, at the end of this chapter, we do see her killing off Mr. Prebble. And so as we get into Elektra issue number 24, we actually pick up with Elektra working as a stripper. Yeah, you heard that right. She's working as a stripper. Now, the reason why, because, well, one of her targets, or two of her targets are in that strip club. And the best way to get close to them is to pretend to be an actual stripper. And so literally by the end of the section, we see her get the jump on them while she was mid-dancing as a stripper, pulls her weapons out and kills them off just like that. And like I said earlier, this chapter really does focus more on Elektra's POV, what it's like to be the hunter. And so we actually see Elektra at an airport, and we see her being able to receive a job from a monk. Now, at first, it did seem like the monk was just a regular monk who was just passing out stuff about his lifestyle. But after she passes him, we see that she had received a package. Inside that package is information about her next job. And then we see her fly over to New York to take care of her next job. And so with this chapter really focusing more on Elektra's POV, we're going to see what it was like for her to hunt down Mr. Prebble from the last chapter. Now, in the first section for him in this chapter, we actually see him on the phone still freaking out about the idea that he's being hunted down by Elektra. And really, this section right here kind of shows most basic kind of protection. Just two guys outside his actual door while he's on the phone with the boss of the actual crew. But anyways, you have Elektra take those guards out so easily. By the time she finishes them off, when she looks up, he's on the run again. And it kind of shows her kind of like, okay, you got away this time, but I'll still be on your trail. And sooner or later, I'm going to get the chance to actually kill you off. Now, let's not forget that in the last chapter, Mr. Prebble gave us some examples of what different crews try to do to protect him from Elektra. Like, for example, the guy known as Trask. Now, when it came to Trask, he believed that the best way to protect Prebble was to build a safe room. And his safe room, or panic room, will only have one door, only one way into the actual room, that one door. And the thing is, that door would have some high-tech security to keep people out. If you add some guards around the door and outside the actual building completely, then most likely Elektra would not get over to Prebble. Now, as we all know, in the last chapter, that plan did not work out at all, because we saw in the last chapter, or heard from Prebble, that Trask's plan failed completely, that Elektra was able to get through his actual plan. And so we see in this section that Trask's plan falls apart very quickly. And you have Elektra just killing off all these guards, including being able to get through that one door that leads into the panic room. Now, because Trask was inside the panic room with Prebble, he was able to kind of keep Elektra busy long enough to allow Prebble to actually escape, to go on to his next plan of hiding from Elektra. Now, like we saw in the last chapter, Prebble gave us another example of the idea that he had a house somewhere, and that house had tunnels running underneath it. Now, to Prebble, he said the next guy he hired after Trask believed that those tunnels could be used as a way to stop Elektra, because there's only one way in and out of the actual tunnels, a freight elevator that leads up into the actual, house. The problem was, though, for Elektra, she was able to get into the tunnels, and because she's able to see better in the dark than the guards can, she was able to take out all the guards just like that, including the actual leader of the crew. And so by the time we get to the end of this section, the entire crew was killed off in the tunnels or outside the actual house, so she was able to sneak into the tunnels. And so you have Prebble find the entire crew dead, and he dips out, trying to get away from her once again. And so then we get another page to remind us that for Prebble, he was on the run for many, many days, for many hours, with different crews, just trying his best to get away from Elektra, leading up to the moment where he was then being protected by Bauer and his crew, like we saw in the last chapter. And so that leads us into the ending of this story arc, where you do have Elektra being able to arrive the island that Bauer was trying to use as a way to protect Prebble. As we all know, Elektra arrived on the island as well, and she began killing off all the different guards, leading up into the moment where she walks in the room, she finds Prebble, she kills him, and like I said at the end of the last chapter, we do see her get that drink that he offered her after she had killed him off. And so the book kind of ends on that note because she goes back to the airport and we see her walk by the same monk once again, where she does receive another package from that monk. And of course, it gives her her next assignment. And this time, she's going to London. And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later. What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over the 2001 Elektra series. Now, guys, remember, by this point in our coverage, we are officially done with Greg Rucka's run on Elektra, and now it's time for Robert Rowdy. Now, if you saw my last video, you would know how I truly felt when it came to the writing of Robert, and let me explain. You see, when it came to Greg Rucka, his main goal was to give new life to Elektra. And honestly, he did, because he realized that for a very long time, Elektra was just this assassin in the world of Marvel Comics. Yes, there were some other things about her, but that was her main thing. And so when it came to Greg Rucka, he was all like, can I actually turn the character of Elektra into a proper hero? And so he did. It was one heck of a run. But then after Greg left the title in issue number 22, well, Marvel wanted the title to continue on. They realized that book was still somewhat selling. And so they brought in another writer, and that would be Robert Rowdy. And when it came to Robert Rowdy, he said, you know what? I am going to ignore everything that Greg Rucka did on the character of Elektra. So the whole idea of her now being a proper hero, being a better person, being a good person now is out the window. Now she's back to her old ways again. She's now back to being this assassin out there in the world of Marvel Comics. Now, technically, we are covering the second story written by Robert Rowdy, but in this story, you can really see, that when it comes to Robert, he is trying his best to move away from everything that Greg did when it came to the character of Elektra. Now, in today's video, we're going to cover a three-part story arc that takes place in issues number 25, 26, and 27 when it comes to the 2001 Elektra series. Now, the opening pages of issue number 25, we get the chance to actually learn about the character Elektra is going after, her target, and that would be a character known as Bridget. Now, I already know that I cannot pronounce her last name, and I'm not even going to try at all. So guys, please forgive me there. Now, when it comes to Bridget, we do learn that she's actually a dictator to a small country in Africa called the Jonda. And I really hope I pronounced that word correctly. If not, please let me know in the comments below. Now, we do learn early on that Bridget is very rude to other people. You see, right now she's in London. Now, technically, she's in London for some business stuff for her country, but in reality, she's currently just there for, well, shopping. Now, we do learn early on that she also has a son, and his name is Ibram. Now, Ibram is going to be very important for the story arc, especially in the second chapter. Now, like I said earlier, we kind of see that for Bridget, she's very rude to everyone else around her, including her own son as well. But once she's done shopping, she calls her son and her guards so that they're able to leave and go back to the hotel. Now, when it comes to Bridget, once she's able to make it back to her hotel room, she realized that she is on TV. You see, CNN is doing a special report about her. And let me explain. You see, in her own country right now, she's not loved by anybody at all. The entire country hates her guts. And let me explain why. You see, in her country, there are two different tribes, the Okala tribe and also the Pedi tribe. Now, we learned very quickly that Bridget is part of the Okala tribe, but ever since she became the actual leader of that country, well, she has done everything she can to mistreat the other tribe, the Pedi tribe. Here is one example. If you are a woman, you are technically being forced to join the brothels and, service the men of the army of that country. And even though you don't want to be there, you have no choice. Your leader says if you are a PD woman, you have to work at this brothel and service the men of the army. And so we learned very quickly that there are a lot of people in our country who want to see her dead. Now, CNN, they also announced that there is a possibility that the reason why she's in London is not for actual business, is so that she can actually shop. Now, after all of that, you didn't have her say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and go to bed for the night. The problem is, though, outside her window, there is Elektra. Now, we already know why she's there for. She is there to kill off Bridget. And really, for Elektra, this is the perfect time to go ahead and kill off her target. Now, for Elektra, we have no idea who hired her, but it has to be somebody very close to Bridget. Now, for Elektra, like I said, this is the perfect time for her to go ahead and kill off her target. But the problem is that you didn't have a bunch of guards bust into the room. And here's the reason why. Because remember, for Bridget, she's right now in London. She is away from her country. And with her being away, you had folks in her country trying to overthrow the government, to get rid of her and kick her out of her power position. And so once her guards got word, they said, hey, listen, we got to go. Right now, our goal is to get on the plane and head back home before they are able to take over the government of that country. And so for Elektra, she now needs a new game plan when it comes to her being able to kill off Bridget. Now, once you have Bridget being able to make it back to her country, we continue this trend of realizing how evil she truly is. Let me explain. Because once she gets back to her country, she tells her main guard, like, hey, listen, I need you to go ahead and offer those guys who had taken over that government building amnesty. And her main guard, he does what he's told to do. Now, the next morning, she then tells him, okay, cool, listen, so I heard they took our offer, and guess what? I want them all killed off, just like that. Go ahead and execute them. And by the way, if they have wives or daughters, send them over to the brothels. Now, one of her members of her cabinet gets very upset. Like, what are you doing? Like, you basically offered them amnesty and now you're going to kill them off. And then their wives and daughters are being sent over to the brothels. And she says, yes, because every single one of them were part of the PD tribe. Now, for this guy, he's like, and so what? And to her, she's kind of like, I hate them. They're nasty people and they deserve to die and only be used to relieve the stress of our army soldiers, and that is it. And so we see how evil she truly is. But then later on that night, we pick up with Elektra. Now, this is Elektra just trying to pick up where she left off at in London, which is killing off Bridget. The problem is that to get into the bedroom of Bridget, you need to have clearance for a retinal scan. And somehow Elektra was able to get that clearance into the bedroom of Bridget. Now, for Elektra, this is great. And the reason why, because now she is able to finally finish this job, kill off her target. Except when she goes to kill off Bridget, she finds out Bridget is not there at all. Instead, it's her main security guard. Somehow he knew that Elektra was coming, and so he told his boss to switch spots with him. And so right now, Bridget's in his bedroom and he hid in her bedroom. And for the security guard, his main goal now is to find a way to kill off Elektra. And that is just the ending of the first chapter. And so as we dive into the second chapter, we then jump back 3 weeks ago where we pick up with a character known as Babin. Now we saw Babin in our last chapter at the very end. He was the guy who was very upset with Bridget once she gave those rebels amnesty, but then decided to kill them off the next morning and then send their wives and daughters over to the brothels. Now remember, she only did that because they were all part of the PD tribe. And so we learned that Babin is also part of that tribe as well. And so he was very upset to hear that all those people were sent to their death. And so for Babin, he was the one who hired Elektra. Now we do learn a tad bit more about the actual history of Bridget. You see, we learned that apparently for Bridget, she was not the original leader of the country. Matter of fact, it was her husband. You see, he died many years ago, but apparently she made sure that word of his death did not get out to the public. And the reason why? To give herself enough time to actually take over that leadership role where her husband had left off at. Now, once she was able to get that role, we then learned that apparently for her husband, he also hated the PD tribe as well, but the only difference was that he still allowed them to do whatever they need to do to survive in the country. But once you had her take over, everything changed. She began to go after every single member of that tribe, killing them off or send them over to the brothels. And then she took all their property and all their items as well and put their items inside her treasury. And so for Babin, it's kind of like, listen, she's been hitting my tribe for so long, I'm tired of it. I need you to kill her off. And for Elektra, it's kind of like, hey, as long as you pay me, the job is going to get done. Now, for Elektra, right after she was able to accept that job offer, she realized that she just can't go straight after Bridget because she is a leader of a country. And so for Elektra, that means she needs some time to observe Bridget, to learn more about her. And so you have Elektra begin to watch over her security team, to watch over her son, to gather all the info she needs to find the best way to get close to Bridget. And she realized the best way to do that is to use her son, Imran, because Imran believes that he is some kind of player, that he's some kind of ladies' man, because this man believes with all the money and power he has, he can have any girl he wants in the world. But on top of that, he loves hot European women. And so for Elektra, she fits that bill perfectly. And so you have her pretend to be this hot European woman who wants to be with him. But while pretending, she's then able to collect all these different pieces of information about Bridget. Like, for example, when she goes to bed, it's always at 9 o'clock. And that truly explains why we saw Elektra outside her hotel window at 9 o'clock trying to kill off Bridget. Now, for Elektra, she realized that she had just lost her opportunity to kill off Bridget. But then she realized, wait a second, I still have a way to get close to Bridget, and that would be her son, Ibrahim, because that man lives in the palace as well, back in the home country. But at the same time, the man also loves hot European women. And for Elektra, she fits the bill perfectly. And so you have Elektra go right back over to him and continue to flirt with him. Now, with her being able to do that, he's all like, listen, I have fallen in love with you. And so my goal now is to find a way to sneak you into the palace, really sneak you into the country first, and then find a way to sneak you into the palace so that we're able to spend more time together. And so for Elektra, she just found her best way to get inside the palace, but to also get a way to get close to Bridget, to basically kill her off. Now for Ibram, he was able to sneak Elektra into the palace that him and his mom stay in their country. The problem is that he's not allowed to show Elektra around the palace until his mom goes to bed, because his mom hates the idea of her son spending any time with somebody outside of her tribe. And so for him, it's like, listen, I love hot European women, my mom would not approve of that. And so you have to say, stay here in my room until my mom goes to bed. Once she does go to bed, then I can show you around the palace. Now, this leads into us learning a whole lot more about what is happening in this country. Let me explain. You see, she learns that apparently there was a senator in this country who is now exiled. And the reason why? Because he was trying to work with somebody over in America. Now, this American apparently owned an American company, and they're going to use their money to finance the revolution in this country. And apparently, for the American company, they would get a major tax break if they were able to actually finance the revolution in this country. Now, for Elektra, she realized that she had just killed off a target a while back in a strip club. Matter of fact, in our last video. But either way, she remembers that one of the guys she killed off said about how this company is trying to, help out this country to have a revolution so they're able to have a huge major tax break. And so for Elektra, she realized that maybe there is more to this job than she was told when she had taken the job. Now for Elektra and Ibram, they continue to go around the palace, but they have no idea that technically they're being watched by the main guard of Bridget. And that explains how he knew at the end of the first chapter that Elektra was coming to kill off Bridget. Either way, when it comes to Ibram, he also shows Elektra how to access different rooms, the whole scanning process. And so then, once she's able to get alone with Ibram, she then kills him off. And so that explains how she was able to access the room of Bridget by using his head or his eye through the scanning process to get into the room of Bridget. And this leads us back into the present moment because you did have Elektra trying to sneak into the room of Bridget to hopefully kill her off. But unfortunately, she found the main guard for Bridget, who knew that she was coming. And so he asked his boss to switch rooms with him. And so now Elektra is being told that this room is going to be completely surrounded by guards very soon. Now for Elektra, she realized there is a small dog in the room, and she uses a small dog as a way to distract the guard long enough so that she's able to kill him off, but to also jump out the window. And so by the time the rest of the security team arrive to stop her, it's too late. She had already jumped out the window. And so now that's the ending of the second chapter. So as we get into the final chapter of this video, it's really more of Elektra just trying her best to get away from all the guards who just barged into Bridget's room. Now for Elektra, there are a lot of guards with a lot of guns. So unfortunately for her, she's trying her best to dodge every single shot she can. But unfortunately, she does get shot in the shoulder. But after a few pages, you do have Elektra being able to work her way through all the different guards to just be able to actually get a helicopter to fly away. And so for Elektra, she begins to realize that there is a possibility that she has been played. And the possibility that Babin is just using her as a way to remove Bridget. But in reality, Babin is also just as corrupt as Bridget is. Either way, for Elektra, as she's flying around the helicopter, you have more guards being able to actually shoot down the helicopter, which of course means she does crash back down into the actual palace. But at least now she has gotten closer to her actual target, and that would be Bridget. And so really, the second half of the final chapter of this book is really more of Elektra just chasing down Bridget. It's really her trying her best to get away from Elektra. But it's also Elektra just fighting through all these different guards to just get to Bridget. Like, these guards do not stand a chance at all. But either way, by the time we get to the end of this actual section, it's just Elektra and also Bridget. And you have Elektra just go ahead and kill off Bridget just like that. But she still has one more person to talk to, the person that had actually hired her. Now, let's not forget, the person who hired Elektra is a guy known as Babin. Now, when it comes to Babin, he was kind of hoping that Elektra would take the job, but also die in the process. He was kind of hoping that she would be able to kill off Bridget, but also die in the process so that he would not have to pay her. But also, with Bridget being dead, that means he'll be next in line to take over as the leader of this country. And so you have Elektra pay him a visit. And she's all like, listen, I realize that you were trying to play me, but then another group here had hired me to get rid of you, a group called the DJA. Now, I don't know who the DJ is, but it does sound like they were a group of people who were very concerned of somebody who was trying to remove the current leader of this country, which was Bridget. And they said they were afraid of this person right here who is just as corrupt as she was. And of course, that would be Ben. And so they hired Elektra to go ahead and kill him off. Just like that. And she realized that he hired her kind of help with the process to get rid of Bridget, but then have himself move into that leadership role. But once she learned that he was corrupt and another group said, hey, we'll hire you to kill him, she was down just like that. And so the last few pages is just Elektra killing off Ben. Bam, he is dead. And this Okay, so it's time for us to continue our coverage over Elektra. And now we're going to pick back up with some good old Robert Rowdy's run on the actual character. Now, like I said in our last couple of videos, when it came to Robert Rowdy, he kind of ignored everything Greg Rucka did when it came to the character of Elektra. The whole idea that Greg's goal was to take Elektra and actually turn her into a hero. But thanks to Robert Rowdy, she's kind of back to her old ways again, being a true assassin, going around the world killing off different targets. Now, you're going to notice that we have skipped over issue number 28, and here's the reason why. You see, when it comes to issue number 28, it's really more of an epilogue for a couple story arcs we had did when it came to Robert Rowdy's run on the character. You see, in that one single issue, we just learned that basically there was a group of brokers who were kind of behind the scenes the entire time, and the ones who had hired Elektra to go after the different targets around the world in our last couple videos. But then they decided that they want to go ahead and get rid of her, basically kill her off, because just in case, they will make sure that nothing gets back to them. But when she found out they were trying to kill her off, she said, you know what? I don't like that. And she technically killed off the entire group. That was just issue number 28. Like I said, it was not really that important for us to cover. It was kind of like, okay, cool. Now we know who hired her for all these different targets, and that's really it. And also, they tried to double cross her, and she killed them. And so now we're able to move on to the next story arc. And so getting into issue number 29, today's storyline, we actually pick up with Elektra in a small island called Nau. And I really hope I pronounced that correctly. I tried my best to go online to figure out how to pronounce the word, and unfortunately, I couldn't find anything at all. Like, I tried my best. Either way, when it comes to Nau, it's a small island near Taiwan. Now, over the years, this small island has been ruled by other countries around the world, like Great Britain, for example, but they're finally free. But here comes the big problem, though. You see, you now have a cult on the actual island. Now, the cult worships a god, the god of death in their culture, named Bara. Now, Bara means the god of death, like I said earlier. Now, for this cult, they do have a leader, and that'll be Piaka Lowell. And it basically means the bloody prophet, because this person was supposedly chosen by the god of death, Bara. And so now this guy was able to build up a cult, a nice sized army of people to possibly use to throw over the government of this nation. And that's where Elektra comes in, because somebody who works in the government office had actually hired her to help out with this situation, because they are afraid that sooner or later this actual cult might try to attack the capital and actually try to overthrow the government. And that right there will be a huge problem for this nation, a nation that is still trying to grow after years and years of being controlled by other nations around the world. Now, for this guy, he tells Elektra this, that nobody has officially seen the actual cult leader, but apparently this person is able to speak his words to get people involved, to have them fall in line with his actual goals. Now, on top of that, he also tells Elektra that most likely the cult's base is somewhere in the mountains. And that is a huge problem because the actual nation has not been able to actually map out the actual mountain. So they have no idea where the exact base of the cult is at, but it's somewhere in the mountains. And so for Elektra, her goal, find the base, find the leader, and kill him off before this cult is able to possibly ruin this nation. But now we are going to shift our focus over to one of the members of the cult. Now, when it comes to this member of the actual cult, we don't actually know his name, but we're going to be using him as a way to get a POV of what it's like to be a cult member of this cult. And we do learn very quickly here that apparently they go around the countryside of this nation and burning down all the farms on the countryside, but also killing off the people who had owned those farms. And the reason why, because those people, those farms, they are falling in line with the actual government, going against what the cult actually stands for. And so because of that, they all have been killed off and their farms have been burned down. Now, the member that we are actually following, we see him being able to wrap up a head of somebody he had killed. And he takes that head back over to where the actual base of the cult is at. And so we're kind of getting a good idea of where the actual base is at. Somewhere deep in the mountains where it, of course, snows a lot in that area. Now, like I said earlier, nobody truly knows what the cult leader actually looks like. Nobody knows who it actually is, it seems like, because you have this one member getting very upset because he wants to, apparently a lot of people want to just go ahead and actually attack the Capitol. But apparently the leader of this cult has not decided when they are actually going to do it. And apparently he wants a word with the actual leader. He's also very upset about the idea that he's not allowed to put the head of a person that he had just killed on top of a pole. But either way, you do have the guy try to walk over to the actual building the leader is currently in. But then he is stopped by the general. Now we learn here that apparently the general is the only person who has actually seen the leader. And he tells this guy, no, you are not allowed to talk to him. No, you are not allowed to go in there at all. Right now, you talk to me. And then I talk to him. And I get it. You're getting very upset about the idea that we have not attacked the Capitol. Just know that it's coming very soon. Now, we do learn here that apparently the government official, had told Elektra that their main goal was to get the king, the queen, and the princess off the island. Now, the king is apparently already gone. It's now time for the queen and also for the princess. Now, the princess, she's on her way over to the airport, to the plane that's going to get her off the island. But the problem is that her transport team, they get ambushed by members of the cult. And just like that, one by one, each member of this actual transport team is taken out by the members of the cult. And then they're able to grab the princess and take her back to their base. And so now the princess is actually their prisoner. But as we jump back over to the actual base of the cult, that is when you have everyone gather around the actual building the cult leader stays in, where you have the cult leader reveal himself to every single member of the cult. Now, we don't get the chance to actually see the leader of the cult. It's actually saved for a later part in this story arc. But for right now, this cult leader is able to speak his words, to get everyone motivated, to get everyone ready to actually attack the Capitol. And every single member, they're falling in line. They're getting ready to go ahead and follow their leader's orders to attack the Capitol, to actually bring it down. But getting back over to the princess, who's currently a prisoner for, well, this cult, we do learn that apparently they don't have the princess, that in reality they have Elektra, that actually she wore disguise to pretend to look just like the princess so that she would be able to find the actual base of the cult, but to also get close enough to kill off the cult leader. And so just like that, she's now able to go on with her mission, with an easier chance of killing off her target. And so as we dive into Elektra issue number 30, it's really more of, well, Robert Rowdy trying to remind us that Elektra is a master assassin. Now, technically, we already know that. Like, come on. It's Elektra. Of course she's a master assassin. But what I mean by that statement is that it's really more of her showing off her speed, being able to move around the base without anybody actually seeing her. And if they do see her, bam, they're killed off just like that in a matter of seconds. And so for Elektra, it's her trying her best, just going around the actual base of this cult to hopefully figure out who is the actual leader of the cult, because she has to find him and then, of course, kill him off. And so it's just her just listening in on all the different conversations going on around the actual base, hoping to hear the right one that could lead her over to the person she needs to kill. Now, for Elektra, she does find an old man who's talking to younger members of the actual cult. Now, for this old man, it's him really explaining why he joined the cult. Because for the younger people, they had joined the cult for a completely different reason. They had joined the cult because, well, they were promised the idea of getting a huge amount of money, the idea of getting a lot of women. It's the whole idea of them getting things in reward for helping out taking down the capital. But for the old man, it's completely different. He says, listen, let me tell y'all why I joined the cult, because I've been on this island for a very long time, but I also know the history of the island as well. I know that this island has been taken over by many nations around the world. We have been forced to speak their tongues. We have been forced to praise their gods. And unfortunately, our culture was dying off piece by piece by piece. And so when Bara, the god of death, said that his prophet would come back one day, and he did, we realized, me and the older members of this cult realized, it's finally happening. This older God is bringing back his prophet to lead us back into our ways, the ways that were destroyed over time thanks to other cultures. Now, for the younger people, they're kind of like laughing at him because they realize that he truly believes that the cult leader is actually this prophet for the god of death. But either way, it's him saying, you are the fools, because this leader is going to change the island for the betterment of all our people. Now, once you had the young folks run off to go ahead and get ready to raid the capital, the old man falls down and he sees Elektra. Now, this moment right here is really important for his character, but you do have Elektra continue on to find the actual leader. Now, getting back over to the guards who were assigned to watch the princess, really more Elektra in disguise as the princess, well, the next guard comes for his shift, and he realized the last guard is no longer there. He's kind of like, okay, that's weird. Now, in reality, the other guard is being used right now by Elektra as a prop, make it seem like the princess is just asleep. But in reality, it's a dead body right there, and Elektra is just running around the entire base of the cult. Now, the next guard to come in, he realized there's something off about the idea of the body on the bed. And he realized it's his friend, the first guard, who was assigned to watch over the princess. Again, being Elektra in disguise. But the problem is, by the time they find the dead body of that guard, explosions everywhere. It distracts every single member of the actual cult to give Elektra just enough time to hopefully find the leader of the cult. And thing is, she's actually able to find the main building where the cult leader is actually hiding out at. Except when she walks into the room to meet this cult leader, she actually sees a young boy. This young boy is actually the leader of the entire cult. And so as we dive into the final chapter for today's video, it's really more of Elektra kind of wondering what to do here, because now she realized it's a child that was actually the leader of the entire cult. And she's not really up to the idea of killing off a young boy. And so she walks away, and she's kind of wondering how in the world is she going to be able to actually complete this contract because she was hired to kill off the cult leader, and the cult leader is a child. Now, because Elektra did cause a lot of explosions earlier, doing a lot of damage to the actual, base of the cult, you do have some members telling the general of the cult, like, hey, listen, we only lost a few men, but hey, we have lost a lot of weapons, cannons, other kinds of gears we could use to possibly attack the capital. And so for the general, he wants to go ahead and give up. But then the young boy appear. Now remember, by this point, they already know the young boy is their cult leader, and he begins to give out another powerful speech. Now, here's the problem though, because he is now talking about the idea of just going ahead and continuing to attack the capital, even though right now they have lost a lot of weapons and other kind of gears that could possibly help them. But on top of that, they have lost a few men as well. And so for the general, it's kind of like, what are you doing? We do not stand a chance attacking the capital. We are going to lose. But for the cult leader, he's all like, no, we got this. We can do it. And every single member of the cult, they're kind of, again, falling in line with their leader. And word spreads very quickly. And let me explain, because if you were a farmer, like I said earlier, if you were a farmer or you were somebody who was part of a farmland, if you believed in the government over the cult, you'll be killed off and your farm would be burned down. But if you were on the other side, like you actually believe in the cult, you would live, but also when the time comes, you would actually join the army in the attack of the actual capital. And so you have all these different farmers or helping hands beginning to join the marching of the actual cult, heading towards the actual capital. They're getting ready for the big battle. But now nighttime comes around. It's time for them to rest. But this leads into Elektra being able to pull off her master plan. But I want to jump back over to the old man again. Here's the reason why, because remember, the old man truly believed in the cult leader, but in a completely different reason. He believed that if the cult was able to take over the government, then the old ways of this nation will finally come back after years and years being locked away thanks to other nations controlling this actual nation. But you did have some younger members go over to the older man, and he says, listen, I no longer believe in the cult. I no longer believe in the whole idea of our old ways coming back. And it's kind of like, okay, that's a huge change in this character. What happened to him? Well, he said he saw the angel of death. And of course, he's talking about Elektra. But I want to get back over to the cult leader. Here's the reason why, because you have the cult leader being actually excited about the fact that his army is slowly growing, that he was able to get more people on his side. And he truly believes that maybe, just maybe, they should be able to win the battle against the capital. But the problem is you have the general go off. And the reason why? Because the general was the one who put everything together. Let me explain. You see, for the young boy, he lost his mom at the age of 4 years old. And so he was founded by the general. Now, when it came to the general, he realized that he had a great opportunity to build up a cult here. And so what he did was he used the young boy as a way to build up an army by saying the young boy is the prophet who's supposed to lead the army into the war against the capital to overthrow the government. But in reality, it was just a general trying to reach that goal. And so all the different kinds of decisions that were being made was really more the general than the actual young boy. The young boy was just being used as a model, a figure to have people actually believe in. But now the young boy, he truly believes in what he was raised to supposedly be. He believes he is the prophet. And so you have other members of the cult kill off the general. And so now the young boy is truly in charge of the entire cult. But this begins the downfall for the actual, cult leader, because then he sees all these different guys around him just dying one by one. Every time he calls out for help and people run towards him to see what in the world is going on, they die. It is Elektra just showing off her speed, showing off how fast she is because she's able to kill off all these different people without actually being seen. And so right now, for this young boy, he's freaking out. He is screaming for help, and more people are trying to come over to actually help him out. But I want to jump back over to that old man once again, and here's the reason why. Because you have the old man telling us why he had changed his ways. And he says, listen, I ran into a god, the god of death, the goddess of death. And of course, he's talking about Elektra. Now, he was drunk and he fell down when he had actually met her. And so because of him being drunk and how fast she truly was, and also his head injury, how fast she moved, he believed that she was actually real, the goddess of death. And she said, listen to me, old man. Your God is not real. He has no authority over you at all. And then she disappeared at a very fast pace. And so because of that, he believed that he was confronted by the actual angel of death. And so overnight, you have Elektra just killing off more and more members of this actual cult to the point where it all comes down to being just a young boy. She found a different way to actually kill him because without his cult, what can he do? Without his cult, he cannot attack the capital. He cannot overthrow the government. He can no longer be in charge at all. And now it's just people on the island who never truly believed in the cult in the first place. And so Elektra found a different way to actually complete the contract, to kill off her target without actually killing him. And so the book kind of ends on the note where you have the young boy still out there with all the dead bodies of his fallen soldiers, where you do have soldiers of the government arrive to pick up all the dead bodies. Now for the young boy, he still believes in himself to the point where he believes that he's actually able to recruit other people into his cult. And so he walks up to some soldiers like, hey, listen, I know that you work for the government, but like, join my side, the cult side. And they look at him kind of like, nah, bro, we heard about you. You're just a child that was able to trick a bunch of people into believing that you're some kind of prophet. But in reality, you're just a young boy. And that's really it. And so what's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over the 2001 Elektra series. Now, technically, this is going to be our last video of that series. And the reason why, because after this story arc, there was only one more issue. And with that one more issue, it was really more of Rowdy kind of giving us a quick rundown of the character of Elektra and how her first death had actually affected other people around the world, but also herself in the rest of her life. It's not really that important, so that's why I say today is going to be our last video for the 2001 series of Elektra, because after that book, the series was canceled. Now, with that being said, today's story arc is really more of what would happen if Elektra got sick on the job? What would happen if she got the flu in the middle of one of her assassination attempts? And it does kind of make for a somewhat interesting story arc. Not the greatest, but still somewhat enjoyable. And I do hope that you guys also enjoy today's comic book video. But here we go. Now, the opening pages of this book is really more of Elektra coming back home to America. You see, she was in a small nation in our last story arc where she was given a job to kill off a cult leader. Now, on her way back home to America, really on her way back home to her apartment, she gets a phone call for her next assignment. But while she's on that phone call, the news report is telling that there's some kind of new flu out there that's affecting a lot of people in the small area of Asia, the same area that she had just left in our previous story arc. And so we're kind of getting the hint right there that there is a possibility that Elektra might have this new flu. Either way, she does finish her phone call and she does get her new assignment to go after a different person. And matter of fact, we jump over to her next target. And so we jump over to a character known as Evgeny. And I really hope I pronounced the name correctly. I did go online to get a better idea of how to pronounce his name. Now, when it comes to Evgeny, he's actually a mob boss in this New Jersey area called Barrington Beach. Now, in this area, he owns the entire boardwalk, it seems. And matter of fact, the people there, they know him very well. The cops there, they know him very well. And matter of fact, every single person in that area, they are scared of him. Now, for Evgeny, he's kind of full of himself. He kind of believes that he is untouchable. There's no way that anybody can do anything to him. Now, we also see him with his son, Yuri. Now, when it comes to Yuri just finished an entire career at college at Harvard University. And so this kid's kind of like, hey, Dad, listen, I think I have some good ideas for the family business. Now, this really shows that these two characters, they have different ideas of how to make money. When it comes to Evgeny, he's kind of still old school, drugs, sex workers and things like that, those kind of rings. But when it comes to Yuri, he's more on the digital side, DVDs, pirating, and the list goes on. And so for his father, he's more of like, no, I know how to run my business. No, I know what's best for our family. Yes, you may have gone to Harvard, wrong H University. Yes, you may have gone to Harvard, done great things out there, but now you're back here in my area. And let me tell you right now, I know how to work this entire area. I know what's right for our entire family. Now, he does walk into what seems to be a brothel where, of course, he's looking for a woman for the evening. Now, apparently, some new girl named Amanda had just started. And so the person in charge of the entire brothel, she tried to tell Evgeny that his new girl, Amanda, is not ready for his kind of activities. But for Evgeny, it really shows that because he believes he's untouchable, that he's in charge of everybody, that he does not care what other people think. And so he grabs a young girl and they head back to his place. Now, once they do get back to his place, you do have Amanda, the young woman, try to get away from him because she knows that she's not ready for his kind of activities. And so she was actually able to scratch his face and to get away. Now, while she's trying to get away, his guards or his fellow men are trying to shoot at her. And apparently they cannot get her at all. So she was able to get away. Now, once he does go inside for the night, we see on the outside that Elektra has arrived. Now, like I said earlier, she just came home from her last assignment. And apparently the news said that there was a new flu strain out there in that area where she was just at. And the reason why I'm bringing that up right now, because for Elektra, while she's trying to jump around the guy's actual property and trying to get towards the actual house, well, when it comes time for her to grab the next tree branch in the middle of her jump, it does seem like her vision is a tad bit messed up because she was unable to grab that tree branch and, well, she falls straight to the ground and kind of hurting her arm a tad bit. And so with that happening, she's all like, that seems weird, but also she has to retreat for the time being. Kind of give her arm a tad bit of rest so that she's able to be 100% when it comes to going after her next target. And so later on that night, she tries to scale the side of the building to get on the roof to find a better way inside the actual house. Except once she's able to reach the rooftop, once again, thanks to her being a tad bit sick right now, she makes too much noise. And of course, some guys hear her on the roof and they're kind of like, hey, we should most likely check that out. And so when they go to the rooftop, they find her. And of course, it leads into a fight. Now, really, for Elektra, if she was on top of her game right now, these two guys would be dead in a matter of seconds. But the problem is she is sick. And so she was able to take out one guy at least, but the other one was able to get away with just a stab wound. But she has to retreat because she realized there's something wrong with her. And it kind of shows that for Elektra, she's not really used to the idea of being sick. And she's kind of wondering how in the world is she going to be able to complete this job? And so as we get into the next chapter, it's really more of the guy telling his boss, Evgeny, what happened to him. Now, for his boss, Evgeny, he can't really believe what actually happened to his men. One is dead and one is injured by some kind of woman. And so for the first couple panels, it's kind of like, okay, you know what? I don't believe your story until he shows him the weapon that Elektra left behind when she stabbed this guy. And once you have Evgeny see the weapon and you have him say like, she was wearing red, she was wearing a ninja outfit, he knows who she is. He knows it is Elektra. Now, when he calls in his best guys to kind of help handle the situation, they don't believe that Elektra is there. And really, we had talked about this before when it came to Robert Rowdy's run on Elektra, because for Robert Rowdy, he basically told us that when it comes to Elektra, she's kind of like a myth to most of the people in the world. The whole idea that people don't believe that she's actually real, that she's some kind of assassin who may or may not come after you. But for Evgeny, he's like, no, I've seen her before. If she's here right now, that means she's coming after me. She's here to kill me. But the rest of his crew, they don't believe that she's actually real. But the way he's acting, they're kind of being freaked out at the moment because he's acting like a madman because he's mad at them for not believing that he's actually being hunted by Elektra. Now, at the same time, it's also him kind of wondering who had hired her because he knows that for Elektra, she would not just come after you for no actual reason. She has to have a reason to come after you. And so for Evgeny, he realized that somebody in his organization had to hire her to come after him. Now, once you have his son, Yuri, say like, hey, dad, listen, there's no way it was me or anybody else in this room that will hire somebody to kill you. He's now trying to think, okay, who's outside my organization want me dead? And let's not forget, this man believes that he is untouchable, that everyone in that area knows who he is. Everyone in that area knows that he is some kind of mob boss. And so for him, it's kind of like, that leaves the door open for almost anybody in the city. But then he realized it could have been that Amanda girl, the one he took from the brothel earlier, he tried to have some activities with, but she ran away. And so he now believes in the possibility it was her or the lady in charge of the entire brothel. And really, once he gets there, he demands the person in charge of the brothel to bring out Amanda because he believes that she has nowhere else to go, that he believes that she must be there hiding. But at the same time, he also believes that she was the one who had hired Elektra. Now, lady in charge of the brothel, she tells him like, listen, she's not here. The last time I saw her, she left with you. And the question is now, where is she? And so for Evgeny, he realized that maybe she's not there. And so he goes on with his day. Really, he leaves the brothel to find other people who may or may not want to hire Elektra to get rid of him. Now, after he does leave, we do see that Amanda is there. She was hiding there after their incident earlier, and thankfully he didn't see her. Now, honestly, she's not really important because after this section right here, we're not going to see her ever again in the rest of the story. But we do see him going after other people in the city near the boardwalk to hopefully figure out who was the one who hired Elektra to come after him, who was the one who wants him basically dead. Now, we cannot forget that this is not his first time running into Elektra. He met her before. You see, he didn't tell his son Yuri the first time he met Elektra. It was a long time ago when he was not really in charge of the family. But he does tell us that there was a time where the Ma family had to meet with another Ma family to kind of make a deal with one another. And really, the meeting was going well. But then Elektra appeared. Now, when she appeared, she cleared the entire room almost. But for Evgeny, he realized at that moment how great she was as an assassin. Like, she was unstoppable. There were two different families in there that had so many guns that they could have used to actually bring her down. And unfortunately, no one could get her. And she was able to take down her targets just like that. But he was able to get away just barely. But with Elektra coming after him, this is a man who is completely paranoid. And really, he has the right to be paranoid because he's seen her in action before. He heard the stories about her. He knows that what she is actually capable of if she wants to kill one of her targets. But the thing is, he still believes that somebody out there had hired her to come after him. Now, yes, he is correct, but he believes it has to be somebody in his organization. And matter of fact, there is a brief moment where he believes it is actually his son who may had hired Elektra to come after him to hopefully kill him. Because let's not forget, when it came to him and his son Yuri, they did not really agree on how to run the family business. For Yuri, he wants to go more digital. But for Evgeny, he wants to stay old school. And so with their minds being in different areas, he's kind of believing right now in the possibility it could have been his son who hired Elektra. And so he actually does attack his son. Then he realized that he's in the wrong for attacking his own son because he believes that his own son may have hired an assassin to kill him. But later on that night, you didn't have Evgeny try to get a full night of sleep. But while trying to do that, this is a man who's still very paranoid in the possibility that maybe, just maybe, Elektra could come out of nowhere and try to kill him in his sleep. Except he does hear a bunch of noise on the rooftop. And yes, it is Elektra, but let's not forget that she got the flu. Now, earlier on, the flu has not fully affected her just yet, but by this point in the story arc, it has completely taken over her body to the point where she had just crashed through the skylight and she is completely knocked out. And so for Evgeny, this is perfect because now he can take Elektra as a hostage to learn who in the world had actually hired her. But on top of that, at least now he can say, hey, you know what? She's out cold, which means I have the chance to actually survive here. This is great. And so as we get into the final chapter for today's video, it's really more of Evgeny trying his best to figure out, okay, who hired her? And so his main goal is to interrogate her, to torture her, to hopefully get that information out of her. But the problem is for Elektra is that flu is taking over her body completely. She can barely stay awake. And this man is smacking her like no other to hopefully get what he wants out of her. Now, his son Yuri, we kind of see the idea that he's very concerned for Elektra, like he actually knows her very well. But also he's scared of the idea that she might reveal a big secret of his. And so that is the moment when we learn that it was actually Yuri who had hired Elektra to kill off his father. And the reason why, because like I said earlier, when it came to Yuri, he wanted to do new things in the family business, but his father still believed in the old ways, the old school ways. But also because his father believed that he knew what was best for the actual family. And so for Yuri, he hated the idea that his father was not even trying to give him a fair chance here. And so what he did was he hired Elektra to go ahead and kill off his father so that he'll be able to actually take over the family to kind of show that he knew what he was talking about. And so as we jump back over to the present day, this man is freaking out about the possibility that Elektra might actually tell his father that it was your son who hired me to kill you. Now for Yuri, he tries to tell his father like, hey dad, you know what? Why are you trying to torture her? Why are you trying to get this piece of information out of her? Why not just go ahead and, kill her off? Now for Evgeny, he does believe that Yuri is right. He should kill off Elektra, but he still wants to know who had hired her to come after him. Now, with Elektra being sick with the flu, she begins to hallucinate really bad to the point where she believes that now she is talking to the demon god known as Bara, or the god of death to be more exact. Now, we had talked real briefly about Bara in our last video because when it came to Elektra, she went to a different country where in that country, Bara was their god of death. And so for her, she believes right now that she is seeing the god of death in front of her. But in reality, it's just, Evgeny and his crew. And so you have Bara kind of basically talking down to her, saying like she's nothing, that she cannot even stop him, the god of death. But you have Elektra believing that she's actually having a conversation with Bara, and so she's trying her best to talk back to it, saying that she'll break free and actually kill off the god of death. Now, while she is saying all of this, you have Evgeny and his crew believe that she has gone officially crazy. And they're kind of like, you know what? Let's go ahead and just step away for a brief moment because honestly, she's kind of scary right now. And I feel like she might actually kill us if we give her the chance. Now, once you have most of the crew leave, including Evgeny, you have Yuri stay behind. And the reason why, because he still believes that Elektra is on his side, that Elektra is going to help him killing off his father. Except as soon as the man cuts her free, she kills off Yuri just like that. There goes Yuri. And the only reason why, because she saw Yuri as Bara, the god of death. Something she has to conquer, something she has to get rid of. And the reason why I'm saying that, because remember, for Elektra, she had died by the hands of Bullseye, but then she was brought back by the Hand. And so after being brought back to life after being killed off by Bullseye, it's kind of like she was able to cheat death, but at the same time, she's still trying her best to conquer death. The whole idea that she was brought back to life and sooner or later, she might meet her actual end once again. Either way, because of Elektra being sick, she still continues to hallucinate to the point where she believes that every single member of the actual family, including Evgeny, she believes is actually Bara, the god of death. And so right now, she's trying her best to conquer the god of death by killing off the god of death. And so the entire family, the entire Ma family has been killed off by Elektra just like that. But in reality, she has no idea that she is killing them off. And the book really ends with her going back to her hotel room and getting some rest. And once she was able to get that rest, she does feel a whole lot better. But now she's kind of wondering what the heck just happened and how the heck she got back to her hotel room. Either way, you do have the hotel owner tell her like, hey, listen, you gotta leave because I actually need this room for my new customer coming in later on today. So, sorry, but get out. And the book really ends on that note right there. And like I said, there was one more issue after this story arc. It was really used as a way to wrap up the entire series. But yeah, this is going to be the end of our coverage over Elektra, the 2001 series. So we covered Brian Michael Bendis, Greg Rucka, and now Robert Rowdy's run on the character. So yeah, guys, that's it. And I do hope you enjoyed today's comic book video, but also our coverage over the entire series. Because honestly, I found most of the stories somewhat enjoyable or really good. For me, there weren't any really bad stories in this actual series. But with that being said, guys, see you on the next comic book video. Later.